Hi, welcome back guys. This is your friend, the Nika Fanfics. Back with amazing fanfiction. This is the series of What if Deku had Bloodhound Vampire Quirk? Now before starting, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. The Midoriya household was never a particularly quiet one. When Hisashi was there would always be music playing and laughter to be heard. Even now he's gone, Izuku was quite a loud one when he wanted to be, but Inko didn't mind. Their house was a home filled with childish laughter, shrieks of joy and excitement, usually that is. Today was not a day like that. In fact, one Midoriya was having a particularly bad day, most may agree. "Mama, I'm hungry and my front teeth really hurt." Izuku wailed on his mother's lap, salty tears soaking into her jumper as she tried to calm down her baby boy. All she wanted to do was take the pain away, but her mind was foggy, she couldn't think straight. He was at that tender age where teeth fall out, and new ones force their way in. The first time Izuku teethed as a baby, he was so easy to deal with. He was satisfied with just the teething toys and the teething gel, but this time? Nothing was working. Suffice to say, he was in a little more pain than the average teething child. Inko liked to believe she was a decent mother. She was on her own with Izuku now, nevertheless, she tried her damnedest to provide for her son both materialistically, but to also give him a loving, nurturing environment to grow up in. Above all else though, she tried to keep him safe and free from harm. She was prepared for motherhood to be no walk in the park, she expected that. No sane person could expect parenthood to be easy. What she wasn't prepared for, was to have a vampire for a child. One may question just how, exactly, did Inko not prepare to have a vampire child? Surely her husband was a vampire himself for this to happen. Truth be told, Inko didn't know he was a vampire till it was too late. Yes, Hisashi's skin was always cold to the touch and incredibly pale. He also had dark hair, freckles that stood out in the pale canvas of his face like constellations in the night sky, captivating red eyes and sharp, pearly white canines, but she didn't know he was a vampire. Why, that wouldn't be anyone's first guess in a world full of all types of quirks that can do any manner of things. Looking back, she probably should have clocked it before he was killed by a hunter. Now though, she has to raise Izuku without his help and no real gauge on the vampiric abilities Izuku is likely to gain in the coming years. The whole vampire child thing came out of left field for the green-haired mother really. Why did he not display any vampiric tendencies as a baby? Why now? There was no point asking these questions now, for she had a dilemma on her hands, Izuku's hunger. She fed him normal food yet he was still always seemingly hungry. Then it occurred to Inko, vampires drink blood. They don't eat normal food. How could I be so very silly, she scolded, internally. Following this train of thought, she picked up the still crying child on her lap, dressing him to leave the house, and rushed to the butcher's in search of animal blood in an attempt to quench the boy's thirst. Thankfully, it worked. Inko slumped back into the couch, gladly sat next to her happily, drinking the crimson blood hungrily from his favorite plastic All-Might cup. Once he finished, he leant over putting the empty thing down with two little hands and smiled up at his mother. It was an innocent thing, a little boy offering a toothy grin to his parent for quenching the insatiable hunger he once felt. The thing that startled Inko, however, was the teeth that weren't there a mere half-hour ago, specifically the fangs. Inko tried to bury her surprise and offered a slightly forced smile. The child didn't in fact notice the strain in Inko's return smile and instead thanked his mom and skipped off to his room to go color in and most likely research and analyze heroes. Meanwhile, Inko had some research of her own to do. It turns out, although vampires like to keep hidden, there were a lot more of them than she thought. There's even some heroes rumored to be vampires like Eraserhead. She would have to tell Izuku, he would be overjoyed to know there are probably heroes like him. Now don't get Inko wrong, she will always be worried about her baby boy. But the whole Izuku technically being undead thing really reduced the worry she felt over Izuku going into the hero industry. That evening, Inko decided it would be a good idea to tell Izuku about him being a vampire. The two Midoriyas sat at the small dining table, a pleasant quiet buzzing between them. Izuku kicked his legs as he hummed to himself, adding the finishing touches to his masterpiece, a drawing of the hero Snipe. Meanwhile, Inko fiddled with one of her chopsticks trying to come up with the best way to tell her son that he's a vampire. Surely she couldn't just say, "Izuku sweetie, you're a vampire with supernatural abilities that will probably only get stronger with time as well as the quirk you may or may not be able to activate." "I'm a vampire, mama?" Izuku asked, tilting his head like a lost puppy. She said that all out loud. Well, at least she knows where Izuku got his mumbling habit from. Yes sweetie. You're a vampire, just like your dad." Inko gave a small, hopefully reassuring, smile to Izuku as his face contorted in thought for a few beats before he started beaming, once again displaying his new fangs. I can't wait to tell Kaken on Monday. Izuku, who was now stood up, jumped up and down, practically vibrating with excitement. Now we can for sure be heroes together even though I don't know what my quirk is, it won't matter. Izuku had tears of relief and happiness brimming in his eyes. Izuku and Katsuki's relationship had gone downhill. It started just over a year ago when Izuku's quirk gene was found to be dormant. The doctor had told the mother and son duo that it was a waiting game to see how and when his quirk would activate. Katsuki had called Izuku useless and weak for it and started ignoring him, but now he knew for sure he was going to get some kind of power. Now he would be friends again. Now Izuku, I don't have a problem with you telling Katsuki, but do try and keep this secret. Being a vampire is nothing to be ashamed of, but some people still don't like vampires and might hurt you because of it. So only tell people you really trust, okay darling? Inko explained slowly as she ran gentle fingers through soft curls. I understand mama, I'll be extra careful, I pinky promise. Izuku agreed as he leaned into his mother's touch, offering her a soft, wobbly smile and a tiny pinky to link her own with. The next day Izuku woke up bright and early with a smile on his little freckled face. Today was a very important day as far as he was concerned. Izuku set out the clothes he wanted to wear on his bed before wandering into the apartment to look for his mom. The morning went by too slowly in Izuku's opinion, but eventually they set out to take Izuku to school. Izuku skipped into kindergarten with hope in his heart and yet another smile on his face. He was gonna get his Kaken back today after all, of course he'd be happy. He walked towards his classroom with a determined glint in his now green and yellow eyes. Once he entered, he zeroed in on his old friend. He tapped the slightly taller boy on the shoulder. Kaken? Izuku called. Izuku was fairly patient when it came to Katsuki, but the small amount of patience he possessed in that moment was wearing thinner and thinner as he saw the scowl spread across the blonde's face. What, stupid Deku? I thought I told you to leave me alone. Go sit somewhere else, weirdo. The blonde spat, sending a glare at the still hopeful brunette. But Kaken, it's important I'm a dash, why is he being so mean? I haven't even done anything to him. Izuku frowned as he got cut off. I don't care, Deku. Now, get lost or I'll make you. Bakugo threatened, popping little warning explosions in his hands. All in the hope of scaring off the gnat he called Deku. Fine, Izuku stuttered before all but running to a table at the far end of the classroom and instead opting to read a book or fairy tales his mom gave him. Covered in golden vines and verdant forest scenery, it was his favorite non-hero related thing. It had tales of princesses, knights and all manners of magical, mythical things. He was pretty advanced when it came to school for his age. He devoured most anything fictional and if it held his interest long enough, non-fiction too. While he read, his mind would wander back to his friend. Izuku, being the determined little kid he was, opted to try to find Bakugo at lunch break instead to tell him. When the bell rang, Izuku put his now nearly finished book away in his bag, lest it be torn or damaged by one of the multiple kids that didn't like him, and tailed after Bakugo trying to get his attention. Kaken. I really need to tell you something, it's important, I swear it. Izuku ran desperately up to his old friend, red in the face. Bakugo rolled his eyes groaning then hissed, how about you shut the F up and leave me alone, you useless freak. But Kaken, I'm not useless, oof, Izuku grunted as his small body was knocked to the ground by a now set-off Bakugo. Until you prove to me you aren't useless, then you will always be Deku to me. You got that, you little twerp? Any hope of conversation was dying in Izuku's mind, like a flame flickering in the wind. The question is, will the wind ever stop howling? But that's what I've been trying to tell you. Izuku shouted, visibly frustrated. Izuku didn't want Aro cry, he tried so desperately to hold back tears of frustration that were welling in his emerald and gold eyes. Why wasn't he listening? Prove it, you FING loser. Bakugo snarled, nearing the target of his annoyance. He stalked towards the green-haired boy like a predator ready to pounce on its helpless prey. The flame was now nothing but an ember, quickly losing its glow. Bakugo shouted at Izuku often. But this time felt different, it hurt really bad and left a funny falling feeling in Izuku's stomach. Izuku usually brushed off Katsuki's insults with a wry smile or an awkward giggle, but this time felt more final. It was as if he actually hated him. There was a real venom behind it that Izuku felt infiltrate every part of his body, freezing him to the ground staring at his ex-best friend. Yes, ex-friend sounded right. The poison Katsuki spat seeped into every pore in his skin, filling him with the bitter realization that now sat clear as day in front of him. He wasn't staring at his Kaken, not anymore. He was staring at a bully, a tormentor. Izuku knew that now, he doesn't know how he didn't realize it sooner. People aren't supposed to be scared of their friends, and he was definitely scared of Bakugo right now. Izuku was like a deer in headlights, frozen in fear for a moment too long. Then the fight or flight kicked in, and what was the visceral reaction of prey when faced with a predator of whom they could not possibly fight? Run. And run he did. He didn't realize it in that moment, but Katsuki did. He watched with his nose wrinkled in disgust as a little fluffy green bunny turned tail and ran away from him. He just had to ruin our plans to be heroes together by getting a quirk like that. He won't even be able to protect himself. He'll die. So the BSTRD did have a quirk after all, Bakugo grumbled, such a shitty quirk too, God's Deku is annoying, he huffed outwardly, before stomping off to go play heroes with some other extras in his class. It wasn't until Izuku found a quiet corner devoid of people that he stopped running. He curled up into a ball of green fluff and cried himself to sleep. The emotional exhaustion weighed down on his very being, so he let it carry him off to a dreamless sleep. When he awoke he stretched his little paws, then it clicked. My quirk. This must be my quirk. Izuku thought to himself. Then he tried to change back, visualizing himself human again, and then poof, he was a kid again. The sun was still up high in the sky, so he hadn't been asleep too long. As quickly as he could he ran back to class. He snuck in while the class was being rowdy. The teacher probably didn't realize he was gone anyway. He picked up a random coloring sheet and got to work with a smile on his face. When it was time to go he ran to his mother at lightning speed, to relay the good news. Then they made the short walk back home. Mama, Mama. I have a quirk, he squealed as he crashed into his mom's legs to wrap his little arms around her. As soon as they got home, he couldn't contain the excitement any longer. Whoa there, Izu. Remember to breathe, darling, Inko fussed, peeling the green-haired little boy off her and crouching down to his height, taking exaggerated deep breaths for him to follow. Once he got his breathing back to normal she spoke again. Now what's this about a quirk, darling? Mommy, I turned into a little bunny rabbit. I don't know if I can turn into other animals just yet, but I can turn into a bunny. Watch. With that Izuku took a step back from his mother, closed his eyes and concentrated on turning into a bunny again, and Inko stared at the little green ball of fluff now in front of her with tears gathering in the corner of her eyes. He was just so precious. She scooped up the bundle of fluff and slowly and carefully ran fingers through the curly, viridian fur. They sat like that for a few minutes until the bunny leapt out of her arms, landing gracelessly on the floor before turning into a cat, looking up at Inko and meowing loudly. Before Inko had time to process that, the cat then turned into a crow with dark green feathers. Izuku cycled through multiple other animals before turning into a human again. This is awesome. And it will be so useful for me to become a hero even if I become an underground one. There was a grin of manic glee written over the boy's features, fangs now on display. Inko couldn't bring herself to feel fear because her baby was happy. How could she possibly be scared of him? Vampire or not, he was her baby boy and always would be. The pair went to the quirk registry the following day because transformation was Izuku's quirk for certain. Right? Over the next few years Izuku devoted his spare time to getting a handle on his powers and urges. He could leave the house without a full stomach and overcome the urge to bleed the nicest smelling person dry, and could even hunt small animals by himself. Granted, his mom didn't want him hunting at night till he was at least a little older, but in the early evenings she would allow him to go out in cat form to hunt rats and other small animals to drink from. Due to his going out by himself, and totally not Izuku asking over and over again, his mom also signed him up for self-defense and martial arts lessons so he could defend himself should he run into anyone undesirable. He also took ballet and gymnastics too because he found it fun, and his mom figured it could only help with his fighting, so there was no harm in it. One of his favorite things to do was to confuse the hell out of Katsuki by completely disappearing when he wanted to take out his frustration in him, because that still happened. Katsuki never really wanted to hurt him physically though, it was usually verbal assaults. Katsuki thought Izuku's quirk was weak, and at this point, Izuku was one more insult away from turning into a lion and biting him. Izuku could probably beat Katsuki in a fight by now, but he avoided the idea like the plague because then he would have to fully face the fact they weren't friends, and unless Katsuki goes through some serious therapy for whatever the F goes through his head on a regular basis, they never will be. By this point he was around 9 and one late evening on a Saturday, while his mom was passed out on the couch after getting home from work. He decided to go out hunting. He pulled his viridescent curls into a small puff and put on a dark hoodie along with some shorts and his shiny red high tops. Before opening his bedroom window and turning into a bird, it was easier than climbing down the tree by his window and flying around to find a snack. After flying around a bit, he came across one of the alleyways he liked to hunt in. It was a 5-minute, give or take a few, flight from his house, and there was always something or someone in there, so it was good. Now Izuku did not like drinking from humans, except from his mom who willingly gave him her blood on occasion, but he found he needed to every once in a while to actually function. As a plus, the people he usually found in the alleyway were usually criminals doing something wrong like mugging a person, so he would usually knock out the perpetrator with something he found nearby and drink from their unconscious body. He would never drink enough to kill though. It probably counted as vigilantism, but he decided not to dwell on it too much. He landed on a roof nearby the alley and felt, as well as smelt, a presence down there. He turned into a cat and leapt down at the entrance before stalking down further into the alley. What he saw was not what he expected. There was a tired-looking, purple-haired boy feeding off a rat. Hey, that's my prey. And an equally tired-looking man also draining a rat. Neither noticed Izuku as he turned back into his human form and stood watching them, so he decided to do the stupid thing and open his mouth to these potentially hostile vampires that he didn't know. Hey, this is my hunting ground, find food somewhere else. He bared his fangs in an attempt to intimidate the two, eyes now glowing red. It worked at spooking the smaller one but only made the grown vampire chuckle. Look kid, you've got a ways to go before you can intimidate me, though I do find the fact you snuck up on us impressive, the man commented dryly. He seemed so familiar. The scraggly black hair, the pale skin, black eyes, and that scarf. Eraserhead? Izuku asked aloud. What gave it away? The man asked flatly. He was impressed the little kid recognized him, but he sure as hell wasn't gonna show it. Well, I think it was mainly the scarf, but you're like my favorite hero. Izuku gushed. He couldn't care less if he was being embarrassing right now because this was the Eraserhead he was meeting. I've looked up to you ever since my fangs came in. Izuku beamed at the tired-looking man. The boy's stomach rumbled and his eyes flashed red once more before he dove to the left. He then returned to a standing position with a rat in his hand. Sorry about that, it's just, I came here to eat in the first place, he chuckled awkwardly. Don't let us stop you, the purple-haired boy spoke for the first time. He was busy analyzing him, but he deemed him to be okay. What's your name? I'm Hitoshi, he said after finishing his food. I'm Izuku. Izuku smiled before turning his attention to the rat squeaking in his grasp. Hold on a second, Izuku mumbled before digging his fangs into his food and draining the blood from the creature in seconds. Maybe he was more hungry than he thought? You wanna be friends? I don't know any other vampires. The boy babbled. I guess? Hitoshi stuttered out. Before Hitoshi had even finished his reply, Izuku had his phone out and was handing it to him to put his number in. He did and returned the device. Kid, where do you live, vampire or not? I can't in good conscience let you go home on your own so late. Eraser spoke up again. Can I see your hero license first please, sir? Izuku asked, holding out his hand. The tired hero rolled his eyes but obliged, presenting his ID to the green-haired child. Once Izuku was satisfied, he gave a nod before replying to the pro. Okay, I'll tell you, but only because I know you're a pro hero, Izuku retorted before leading the two out the alley. The two children chatted idly on the way to Greenette's house. They talked about random things from plants, to cats, to memes, and to heroes. By the time they reached Izuku's house, Hitoshi had promised to add Izuku to a chat with other non-human creatures their age. Izuku, I'd like to speak to your mother if that's okay with her, Eraser stated when they'd reached his front door. Izuku nodded his head in response before turning back to his front door. As soon as Izuku put his key in the door, his mom unlocked it and wrapped him in a hug, giving him pecks on his hair and cheeks. Oh, thank God you're all right, Izuku. You're back so much later than usual. I was worried, the woman babbled, still with her son in a bone-crushing hug. Izuku couldn't see Hitoshi, but he could hear him snickering and he had half a mind to kick him in the leg. I'm fine, Mama. I ran into Eraserhead while I was hunting. Izuku beamed again. It was then that Inko took notice of the two figures standing behind her son. Oh my gosh, how rude of me. Would you like to come in? Inko directed the question towards the one she knew to be Eraserhead. Yes please, I'd also like to talk to you about Izuku. Mrs. Midoriya, are there any other vampires in the house other than Izuku? Aizawa asked once the two were situated on the couch. Inko offered the man some blood, but he denied, saying that he and his son had just eaten. They were now sitting together in the living room whilst Izuku had dragged his new friend off into his bedroom. No, not now. Not since my husband died. When Izuku was about, he said that his family was a whole line of vampires, but he had lost contact with them over time due to some issues. But I'm on my own with Izuku and I fear I might not be enough for my baby. Inko worried, wringing her hands together. It was a nervous habit that she had yet to curb. That's why I wanted to speak with you, ma'am. It's not that you've done a bad job, in fact I'd say that you've done a fine job so far, as he seems to have a good handle on his instincts and the abilities I've seen him show for his age. If you're okay with it, I think it would be beneficial for Izuku to train with my son on honing his instincts and abilities further, obviously at a later date, but would you be open to discuss it in the near future? Because although your son seems to possess a lot of skill, he seems like a reckless one to me, Aizawa finished, a stoic expression still plastered over his features. Well, you're right about that. I would have to ask Izuku first, but I would be open to discuss it as long as his safety would be your top concern, Inko replied before picking up her phone off the coffee table, unlocking it for him to add his contact. Here, to keep in touch, Eraser. Thank you, he responded, taking the phone and putting his number in and saving it, but please, just call me Aizawa. Yo! You hear that, Hitoshi? Izuku exclaimed, we might get to train together. Izuku then proceeded to enthusiastically slap his new friend's arm. Yes, I heard it, Izuku, Hitoshi replied flatly, you're not the only one with super hearing. Izuku rolled his eyes at that and put down his last cards. Izuku had won for the third time in a row. Which, while it was impressive, frustrated Hitoshi to no end. How? Hitoshi groaned. He had known Izuku for about an hour, but he could tell they would be good friends even if Izuku is frustratingly freakishly good at card games for a 9-year-old. A magician never reveals his secrets. Izuku gave a small evil smile before Aizawa called for Hitoshi. I gotta go now, but we should hang out next week or whatever. You ever been flying before? Hitoshi asked as the two made their way to the front door. Of course I have. That's how I get to my hunting spot. Izuku questioned, genuinely not following. I meant your vampire bat form, not just a generic, flying animal. Hitoshi-sar said. I haven't. I didn't know that was a thing our kind could do, to be honest. I thought it was just some old myth or something, but it shouldn't be too different. To flying as a bird, right? Izuku pondered, tapping his chin with a claw-like nail. Yeah, Hitoshi huffed a laugh. Oh, and you should introduce yourself in the group chat. Most everyone in there is basically nocturnal, so they'll probably reply to you right away anyway. Hitoshi finished tying the laces on his shoes and stood up correctly. Will do. Izuku chuckled slightly. Goodbye, Hitoshi. Goodbye, Mr. Eraserhead, Izuku chirped as the two went to leave the small apartment. Hitoshi offered a wave and a small smile. Eraser turned to face the green-haired child. Aizawa's fine kid, the man huffed as they walked through the door. Izuku turned to face his mother in disbelief. I can't believe I just spoke to the Eraserhead and I'm friends with his kid. Mum, pinch me, this has gotta be a dream. Izuku looked to his mother, who had a weary grin on her face. Lifting a tired hand, she ruffled her baby's hair. I assure you, Aizu, that wasn't a dream, she yawned, stretching her aching limbs in the air. I'm gonna head to bed now. Do you want anything before I go? Inko questioned. No thanks, Mama, you should get some sleep. I'll be in my room if you want me though, he finished, giving Inko a brief hug before practically skipping off to his room. Inko stood there for a moment watching him go with the same tired smile on her face. She hasn't seen him this genuinely excited in a while, so it's a joy for her to see. Bonus. No, seriously, Dad, I couldn't beat him. It's like he could read my mind or something. Hitoshi whined. The pair were on their way back home from the Midoriyas, chatting all the while. Are you sure you aren't just stunningly bad at cards, Toshi? The elder vampire teased, earning a glare from Hitoshi. Watch it, old man, the child warned. Hitoshi was actually Aizawa's nephew, but due to an accident involving Hitoshi and Shuta's sister, only one could be saved. He tried not to dwell on it, but on bad nights he would remember her cries, beginning for him to look after her child, her baby boy. Yeah, whatever, kid, Shoyuta rolled his eyes lovingly. Anyway, Dad, why did you offer to train Izuku? Hitoshi asked, his curiosity getting the better of him. I'd rather that than him turn rogue and become a threat in the future, Aizawa explained, shrugging. Count Kadula has added unknown to the chat. Zeus, excuse? Siren Head, humst? Geodude, what's this? A new friend? Count Kadula, guys, I found another gremlin. Unknown has changed their name to Green Goblin. Green Goblin, smiley face. Siren Head, well, that's not scary at all. Count Kadula, are you gonna introduce yourself? Green Goblin, oh sorry. My name is Izuku and I'm a vampire like Toshi. Zeus, sweet. I'm Denki and I'm an incubus. Are you the same age as the rest of us? Green Goblin, I'm 9, what about you guys? Geodude, the rest of us are 9 too. I'm Ijiro, by the way, and I'm a werewolf, laughing face. Siren Head, I'm Kyuka and I'm a siren. Welcome to the group chat, there's no escape, smiley face. Count Kadula, don't worry, she's just being dramatic, it'll be fine. Probably. Green Goblin, very reassuring Toshi, haha, I think I'll like it here, smiley face. Count Kadula, what have I done? The children talked most of the night and Izuku found out a lot, even writing about them in his notebook. They had such cool quirks and they all wanted to be heroes too. Izuku was in such a good mood that day even Bakugo's rude comments couldn't dampen his spirits. He'd finally found a group of kids like him that he could relate to because they weren't human. Each one of his friends were so interesting too, like Denki, who had to go out on a hunting night with his family every few weeks to collect human life energy from human dreams. As well as that, his quirk was incredible and so very fascinating to Izuku. Denki also explained that grown-up incubuses get their energy another way, but his parents said he wasn't old enough to know that yet. Izuku was really cool too because he didn't even have to wait for a full moon to transform. He could do it at night time, and his hardening quirk was super interesting. Kyuka was really cool. Her powers worked almost like Toshi's brainwashing, and she could basically convince you to do things by singing. They also said that their mama told them when they get bigger she should be able to sprout wings and fly, which is amazing and would be really useful if they used it for hero work. Hitoshi's quirk was amazing too, even though he didn't like it very much. It would be awesome for hero work, it was just so versatile. From getting villains to back down peacefully, to calming down victims and civilians, it could be used in so many situations. Izuku had 4 very interesting entries to his journals now, and he was proud of each one. They planned a video call a couple months after they started talking. Izuku had to admit, he was curious as to what his new friends looked like. He obviously knew what Hitoshi looked like because they hung out regularly and even started training their vampire powers together. But Kyo, Ei, and Danks were a mystery in that regard. When the weekend for the call came, Izuku had to admit, he was nervous. He didn't exactly know why. His friends were nice after all. They wouldn't make fun of him like Katsuki did. But the nerves still bubbled in his stomach as he pulled his All Might hoodie over his head. Those nerves still stayed there as he made his way to the living room with his mom's laptop to make the call. Those nerves were only chased away when he accepted the call and saw a tired-looking Hitoshi, Denki, and Izuku greeting him enthusiastically, and a slightly more reserved Kyuka greeted him still just as happy. They all have smiles on their faces and they're all happy to see him. And that made Izuku feel a joy he hasn't felt in a long time. "How was your guys' week?" Denki chirped, playing with the old Rubik's Cube in his hand. The 5 of them were sat on call and they were pretty much what Izuku expected, except Izuku. He was still enthusiastic. And incredibly nice, just more quiet than Izuku thought he would be. But Izuku wasn't about to say anything about it, he didn't mind. "My week was okay, the kids at school have laid off a bit too, which is nice. And I saw the coolest quirk ever. There's this new hero that debuted." By this point Izuku's chattering had dissolved into rambling. He looked towards the screen again, embarrassed. "I'm so sorry I get like this sometimes, you can just ignore me if I get annoying." "Hey Izuku, don't think you're annoying. It's really impressive that you can remember all that about a person's quirk." Izuku reassured Izuku, sending him a warm, sharp-toothed smile. "Yeah Izuku, you're really smart, smarter than the rest of these lot anyway," Kyuka chorused, earning a resounding "HEY" from Denki and Hitoshi. "Yeah they're right, you know broccoli. Anyway, what were you saying about that hero? Poison Ivy?" Hitoshi asked casually. Izuku nodded with a wobbly smile before continuing his analysis. If they saw Izuku wiping away stray tears, no one mentioned it. A couple hours later only Denki and Izuku were left due to others having things to do, so the two just chatted whilst doing their own thing. "Hey Danks, I saw your eyes changing color before. Is that an incubus thing?" Izuku asked, adding more notes to his notebook. "Oh for sure dude. I can change my appearance any way I want. Like this isn't how I normally look, I just didn't want to spook you," Denki chuckled sadly. Meanwhile Izuku felt a sort of annoyance in him that he buried down and decided to address later. "Can I see what you look like normally? I bet you look even more pretty than you do now," Izuku complimented the now blushing Denki, offering him a gigantic smile that showed off his fangs. "Why yeah I'll show you," Denki replied. The blonde closed his eyes for a moment, concentrating on transforming. After a couple seconds his skin glowed a pale yellow as he started to morph back to his original form. Denki's hair grew a couple inches, his yellow locks spilling over his shoulders and probably part way down his back. His scara changed to a deep black whilst his irises stayed a brilliant electric yellow. Smallish black curly horns sprouted from his forehead and longish fangs extended from his mouth. Yellow patches of scales trailed over his cheekbones and temples as well as down his neck. He looked stunning. Like a mythical character from one of Izuku's old fairy tale books. "Hey, you have teeth like mine." Izuku beamed. Seeing Denki shift appearances was fascinating to him but also made him a little upset. Why does Denki think he looks scary like this? In this world full of quirks there are a lot weirder looking mutations than this, so why does he think he looks scary? Izuku once again shook those thoughts away. "You look really pretty Denki. Your eyes are so beautiful. You shouldn't ever think you're scary looking, and if anyone says that to you I'll bite them for you," Izuku offered, making Denki giggle. "Denki, go get your sister, it's dinner time," called someone who Izuku assumed to be one of Denki's parents. "Was that English?" Izuku asked curiously. "Oh yeah, my dad's English, so he taught me and my sister English too." "Okay dad, let me hang up the phone first," Denki shouted back before turning to Izuku. "We should hang out in person. It would be fun." "I gotta go now though," Denki offered a smile. "We definitely should, see you later Danks." Izuku waved at the camera, a longing look in his eyes. He could listen to Denki talk for hours if he was perfectly honest. Laters. Denki waved back before they ended the call and Izuku closed the laptop in time for his mom to enter the room. Izuku, you ready for gymnastics? Inko called, stepping through the door. Oh, Izuku exclaimed before dashing into his room to get ready. When he emerged, his mom held out a pouch of blood for him to take. A snack for the ride there, she greeted as he took the pouch off of her with thanks before sticking his fangs into it. He'd gotten better at not making a mess when drinking, which his mom was thankful for. So were all the white plain t-shirts he insisted on wearing. Izuku loved to take casual flies around the city when the weather was nice. The sky is a wonderful place for one to clear their head, he's found. Having that as a pastime leads to seeing and even meeting a lot of strange characters. One recurring character was a man covered in burned scars who once tried to feed him bird seed. To this day Izuku still doesn't know why he had that giant bag of bird seed. But Izuku thinks he's a nice person. He didn't tell him off for technically public quirk usage when he turned in front of him, so that was something at least. Izuku learned the man's name was Dobby and he was homeless, which Izuku thought was sad, but whenever Izuku's mom cooked something nice he would take some to him because Izuku doesn't really eat anymore. Dobby teased Izuku a lot, but he also saw him as a replacement for the siblings he left behind, little brother. They've known each other for about a year and a half, since Izuku was around 8 and Dobby was about, it's safe to say they were, at the very least, fond of each other. When Izuku had first met his pseudo-older brother, he went home to his mother retelling their events. At first, when she found out about her kid talking to this random strange man, she was concerned for Izuku and upset. But the more she found out about this other child, because, fake name or not, Dobby was only a kid, the more concerned she was for him and tried where she could to help him, even if it meant sneaking bits of money into the containers she gave Izuku to pass on to him. About a week after his call with his friends, Izuku went to visit his brother Dobby in the spot where he'd been staying recently when something felt off. He could smell freshly spilt blood, its metallic scent hung heavy in the air like a hellish weighted blanket. Usually the smell of blood would excite Izuku as it meant dinner, but now, the scent made him feel sick to his stomach because he smelt this blood before. It was Dobby's. The little vampire quickly focused on his hearing to try and make out where in the dilapidated building Dobby was. He could hear the weak wheezes of what sounded like someone's attempt at breathing. He could practically feel the fear rolling off the man in waves, wrapping in tight coils around his chest. Following the trail of blood that led up the stairs of the decrepit building, he saw Dobby lying face down on the ground, his ratty old jacket laid on the floor next to him. No, Izuku repeated over and over again, horrified, panic gripping every part of his senses. He rushed over to the surely dying man and rolled him over onto his back. Dobby looked awful. His face was caked in mud and dried blood, his usually vibrant, turquoise eyes dimming by the second. Hey squirt, he coughed, now's not the best time to be honest. I was hoping to clean up the place a bit before you got here, he joked, hacking up a mixture of blood and bile. Who did this to you? Izuku asked desperately, tears threatening to fall down his cheeks from his now red, glowing eyes. Not important, kid, they're long gone by now, he coughed again wetly before Izuku put him in the recovery position. I gotta go get you some help, I'll be back, I promise. Izuku went to get up but was stopped by Dobby weakly reaching for his hand. Kid, I'm gonna be honest, I know you're quick but the paramedics aren't gonna get here as fast and I can't go to a hospital anyway. I'm sorry kid, Dobby sputtered, crying blood. He really didn't want the kid to see him like this, but he also didn't want to die alone. I know a way I can help without getting you to the hospital, but I don't want you to hate me for it. Izuku cried, trying to keep it together and failing miserably. I don't want you to think I'm some kind of monster, but I don't want to lose my brother. That broke Dobby's heart, or what was left of it, like a hammer to broken pottery. If you can help, do it. I would never think you're a monster, Izuku, Dobby reassured. A weak smile graced his otherwise pain-filled smile. He never used Izuku's actual name before. Dobby tended to stick to little nicknames that made Izuku smile or roll his eyes fondly. That was all the encouragement Izuku needed to hear for him to extend his fangs and plunge them into the elder's neck. Dobby's eyes widened in surprise because he didn't know what to expect, but it surely wasn't that. Dobby's vision was already swimming when Izuku found him, but now? It was utterly fed. He was gonna pass out soon enough. Izuku then detracted his fangs, liking the wound so it would close up, then bit into his wrist before holding the wound to Dobby's mouth. Dobby, drink quickly. Izuku instructed. Desperation rang throughout his tone. So Dobby did as he said and drank. He drank and drank till the wrist was pulled away from him and he finally saw black. Bonus. The doorbell rang desperately over and over, so Hitoshi took it upon himself to answer it. Somebody better be dying. Hitoshi groaned before seeing the whole view in front of him. Izuku, little Izuku, one of Hitoshi's best friends, was stood at his doorway bridle carrying what looked like a dead body. Jesus, Izu, Hitoshi all but shouted, Dad, Izuku's finally snapped and killed someone, Hitoshi called to Shoyuta. And why is that my problem right now? The tired man shouted back from his incredibly comfy spot in his bed which was intent on not moving from. He's not dead uncle, I turned him to stop him from dying, Izuku shouted back. Shoyuta could feel another headache coming on. Gods, my head, Dobby groaned as he came to. The late teen imagined this was what a hangover felt like. He's never drunk enough to get that drunk though, so he couldn't say for sure. Welcome to the land of the living, or I guess not depending on what you class as living. A tired-looking man said, slightly startling Dobby as he turned to look at him. The man smelt like coffee and, was that blood? The smell was somehow comforting rather than off-putting though. Dobby could see the silver flecks in his hair and stubble, but he didn't look particularly old. Stress maybe? Gods, I sound like Izuku, speaking of. Where am I? Where's Izuku? Dobby asked, more concerned for Izuku than himself if he was honest. He went to get you something to drink, Dobby. He brought you here yesterday evening, the man explained no further before turning to leave for a moment. Everything seemed a little brighter. More defined and prominent, like his senses had suddenly improved. He didn't know what happened, but he doesn't particularly hate it. Dobby tiredly drew a hand down his face when he felt baby soft skin instead of the usually tight, crisp texture of his scar tissue. What the F dash? The scar tissue that once occupied a good portion of his face and body was no more. Dobby scrambled to the vanity across the room to see his faint reflection in the mirror that stood there. What he saw wasn't the pessimistic, burnt, grumpy BSTRD he'd gotten used to seeing on the off chance he happened to glance at himself on a reflective surface. He looked like Tuya again. It was like looking into the past and the future at the same time. His hair was white once again and his skin was pale like it was before he overused his quirk. Tuya had green eyes, much like he remembered Izuku's to look, with golden flecks littered throughout his irises. It was like seeing young, scared Tuya all grown up and he didn't know what to think about it. What the F dash? Dobby gawked at himself in the mirror, shaking himself from his thoughts. Before the confused man turned his gaze to the man standing in the doorway, and to the green-haired child now standing in the doorway too, a guilty expression on his face. Izuku, what the hell is going on? Dobby questioned, stepping towards the kid. The kid in question was practically trembling and entirely avoiding all eye contact as if, suddenly, the floor was so interesting. I turned you into a vampire tea to stop you dying, Izuku stuttered out. Suddenly the floor coincidentally seemed very comfortable and the fledgling collapsed to the ground entirely confused and still entirely ravenous. I think I'm gonna have a slide, Dobby whined as Izuku rushed over to him with a cup of something delicious smelling in his hands. I'll explain more in a second, but drink this first please, Izuku finished offering the man the mug. Dobby took it happily, downing the cup in seconds, barely fazed that he was drinking a cup of blood. After a beat of silence Izuku spoke again. What do you remember, Dobby? He treaded carefully, messing with his fingers as a distraction. I remember me bleeding out and you saving me, Dobby recalled before looking at Izuku who looked like he was about to cry. Do you hate me, Dobby? The little boy asked, a tear sliding down his cheek. Dobby raised a pale hand and wiped the tear away before bringing him into a hug. I hate a lot of people but you aren't one of them, kid, Dobby comforted him, rubbing circles on his back before separating. Where are we right now? We're at my friend's house right now, 'cause both his dads are vampires so they knew how to help better, but we can leave now. You just had to stay here till you woke up. I'll call my mom to come get us now, Izuku replied, fishing around in his hoodie pocket for his phone. Us? Where are we going? Dobby questioned, his brow raised. We're going to my house. Mom's okay with it because she already knows who you are, Izuku said, nonchalantly typing something on his phone. What? No. I can't move in with you, kid. Before Dobby could protest more, Izuku spoke again. Dobby, you're moving in with us whether you like it or not. I turned you, therefore you are my responsibility. You are my fledgling and I need to look after you. I don't care that you are so much older than me. I'll kick your butt, got it? For such a little kid, he sure could be scary when he wanted. Dobby rolled his eyes. Fine. Great. Mama's gonna be here in 5 minutes so you should prepare and don't be nervous. She already loves you. Izuku shot Dobby a thumbs up before walking out of the room. What the F is my life at this point? Dobby asked himself, scratching his now white head of hair. Bonus. Hey dads. Hitoshi asked as Hitoshi, Shoyuta and Yamada stood at the window watching the pair leave with Inko. Toshi, the tired man replied, intermittently sipping his blood-infused coffee. How come Dobby was so calm when he woke up? And how come Izuku wasn't passed out from exhaustion or something after he turned Dobby? Hitoshi asked, looking at both of his parents. Well Toshi, I'm not even too sure. I've never turned someone myself, but both parties should be unconscious for around 2 weeks after that. I guess maybe his quirk affected them both or something, Yamada replied on behalf of both of them, shrugging before putting his work jacket on. Izuku, poke me one more time and I will stake your butt, Tuya hissed, trying to stay at least a tiny bit professional given he was at work. Izuku was now 11 and was officially a little sheet. Dobby had long since admitted his past, once again letting someone call him Tuya. It was still a little odd to him. Izuku turned up at the company Tuya worked at to drop off something he left and now won't stop bugging the man to introduce him to his colleagues and general place of work. Come on Tuya, I just want to meet the people that work with my amazing brother and explore a bit. Izuku gave him puppy eyes. Literally no. You're gonna get me fired and I need the money to keep going to school. Buzz off. Tuya had officially had enough and was now carrying the younger down the stairs and to the front desk. Can you make sure he stays out please? Tuya sighed, depositing the child by the door. The receptionist struggled to keep it together but replied with a sure. Tuya then turned to walk away after shouting a "see you at home brat" before slinking off to do whatever he did at that office. A lot of things have changed over the last 2 years for the elder Midoriya. Dobby now went by his old name Tuya and managed to get his last name changed to Midoriya without any of his family knowing. Aizawa had some very useful contacts. Inko cried when he said that he wanted to change his name to that, so did Izuku. Tuya ended up crying too, but if you asked him he would have insisted something was caught in his eye. Inko also helped him figure out what he wanted to do with his life and he decided to go for teaching. Do something his quote-unquote father was incapable of doing. He'd always been a fan of literature, so he decided to pursue that route. Tuya had also somewhat mastered his vampiric abilities thanks to Aizawa and Izuku's tutelage. He also got back into training now he could use his quirk again. It was a great way to help Izuku with sparring whilst also letting off steam. Izuku has definitely not beaten him in sparring more times than he can count, and if you say otherwise, you're a lying liar who lies. Speaking of Izuku, he was freakishly strong and capable, more so than a vampire should be even with all the training. But they didn't dig any further into that, which may turn out to be a mistake later. He could even beat Aizawa at times. It was a little scary. "Yai, are you free right now?" Izuku asked, strolling through the city, his phone to his ear. "I was just gonna go to the gym or something." "Why?" Ijiru asked, putting his shoes on. "Oh great. Can I tag along?" Izuku asked, heading in the direction of the train station. "Of course man. Do you even have to ask at this point?" Ijiru chuckled, shutting his front door behind him. "Of course I have to ask. It would be rude to just show up if you didn't want me there," Izuku reasoned, boarding a train to meet Kirishima. "Dude, I don't think I'd ever complain about you randomly showing up to see me." Izuku could hear the smile on his face. "Fine, fine. I'll see you at the train station by your house in 10 inches," Izuku replied, a smile on his face. "Sure thing, see ya," and with that Ijiru hung up. You may be wondering how two 11-year-olds can go to the gym by themselves. The short answer is, they can't. The long answer is that one of Kirishima's moms owns a gym and lets the kids use the equipment when she can monitor them. The two met then rushed to go and meet with Kirishima's mom at the gym. She was a happy lady with short black hair and a sharp-toothed smile just like her son's. "Oh hey Izuku, I didn't know you'd be joining us today," Mrs. Kirishima commented, ruffling the two boys' hair. "Neither did I until like 15 minutes ago," Ijiru added, chuckling slightly. "Well, time to get started boys." The lady cheered, turning to walk further into the gym, the two boys trailing after her. A while later. "How?" Ijiru whined, laying on the floor trying to catch his breath. "Dude, I'm like literally undead," Izuku deadpanned. It also had something to do with Kirishima's mom. She was an incredibly enthusiastic and lively woman. Training with her made it feel like he had infinite stamina, even if he basically already had that. "Yeah, I guess that's an explanation. Fair enough, dude," Ijiru chuckled, rolling towards his water bottle, chugging all the crystalline liquid in only a couple seconds. Kirishima hadn't been training for very long, and even now, it was mostly cardio to prepare for inevitable combat training that he'd do as prep for hero school. "You still going to come swimming with Kyo next week?" Kirishima asked, messing with the now empty water bottle. "Of course I am. I wouldn't miss it. It's gonna be so much fun," Izuku beamed at his best friend, who immediately returned the favor. Kirishima's mum walked back towards where the two were sprawled across the gym floor chatting. She was glad her little Ijiru was feeling more confident in himself. She suspected it had something to do with his friends and she couldn't be happier for him. "Hey Izuku, you wanna come home and have dinner with us?" Kirishima's mum asked, crouching down near the two boys, wiping her brow of the sweat there with the towel that was draped around her neck. "We're having steak tonight. I can make yours extra rare," the black-haired lady grinned. I'll just need to ask my mom and brother, but that sounds great, Mrs. Kirishima. Izuku replied, returning the grin. Kirishima beamed, practically dragging the two out of the gym and to the Kirishima residence. Bonus. Izuku, you can't just turn into an aquatic animal, that's cheating. Kyuka rolled her eyes at the otter version of Izuku swimming in circles around her before turning back into a human. I'm just using my abilities to win the races. Uncle Sho would say that I'm being logical and using my full skill set to reach my highest potential. The impression earned a chuckle as well as an earphone jack in the side. Really, Zuku? Hitoshi gave Izuku a look. You know I'm right, Toshi, Izuku grinned. 'Twas the night before Christmas and Izuku was sitting in bed resting. He had nothing to do and his mama and brother had banished him from the living room till morning. There's only so long one can lay down with their eyes closed before they lose it from lack of STMLTN, so he sat up and grabbed his phone, shooting Tuya a text. Gremlin. Hey Tuya, you wanna go out flying? I'm bored. Walking felony. I'm kinda just content to sit in my bed and not move till morning. Gremlin. Come on Tuya. You know you're not gonna do anything tomorrow anyway. Please see for your amazing, fantastic and oh so adorable baby bro? Walking felony. Fine you gremlin. Meet me on the roof in 5. Go out your bedroom window though. Don't wanna risk getting tempted to go into the living room, smiley face. Gremlin. Fine then, deal. See you in a bit bro, laughing face. Walking felony. Yeah gremlin. Tuya affectionately rolled his eyes and tossed his phone on the bed next to him. He'd just finished 2 essays that he was set by his professor. He now had nothing else work-wise to do for the rest of the week. The perks of not needing sleep. He threw on a hoodie and some joggers before stuffing his wallet and phone in his pockets and making his way out of his window to meet Izuku. Usually, on nights like this when Izuku was bored, he would ask Tuya to go flying with him. Even though he was lazy when it came to most things, he would usually agree to flying because there was nothing like it. Tuya wouldn't admit it, but he was a little jealous of Izuku being able to fly whenever he wanted because that was also his quirk. When Tuya could go out flying though, that was his favorite thing to do. Eventually, he made it to the roof and saw a figure sitting cross-legged which he identified as Izuku. He sat staring up at the cloudless sky. With their superior eyesight they could see the stars even with all the light pollution around them. It was peaceful. Hi Tuya, Izuku said without taking his eyes off the expanse above. Hiya Squirt, Tuya said, sitting next to the boy. It wasn't particularly cold for this time of year, but it wasn't exactly warm either. Tuya was glad he bought a hoodie regardless. It's really nice out here at night, Izuku commented, finally turning to face the other vampire. I agree. The sky's pretty tonight. There was an absence of the chilly fog that had been stealing away the stars lately. The constellations and stars were actually visible tonight. We gonna sit here all night though? Tuya questioned, bumping his shoulder into Izuku's slightly. Nah, but how about a race? Izuku proposed. Izuku almost always won races against Tuya. The only times he lost is when Tuya cheated, one way or another. Oh yeah, I think I can handle that, Tuya agreed, standing up and stretching slightly. The taller vampire cracked his knuckles, sighing happily at the satisfying pops it gave. The two agreed on parameters for their race, then set off. The two skillfully weaved through buildings at top speeds. Whizzing through the air, the two approached the midpoint they set before racing back to their apartment. They were neck and neck, but Izuku was just that little bit faster in the end. Son of a dash. Haha sckit old man, Izuku cheered as the two stood on the roof of their apartment complex, no longer in bat form. UGHHH, I'm not even that much older than you. Tuya groaned, pretending to be annoyed. Yes you are, you're ancient. Oh and don't worry Tuya, you'll get M next time. Izuku gave one last sheet-eating grin as he patted Tuya on the cheek before climbing back down to his bedroom window. Was I this annoying when I was 12? Tuya asked himself, dragging his hand down his face and shuffling towards the fire escape to head back down. Nah, no way, the man decided before retiring to his room to watch some random Christmas films till morning. Home Alone was looking very appealing at that moment. Ho 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 ho! Get up! Aizawa said they'll be here soon. Tuya called on the other side of Izuku's room. It was about 8 or 9 in the morning if Izuku had to guess. He spent the rest of the night yesterday reading, drawing and putting the finishing touches on the gifts he made for his family. I'll be out in a second. Izuku called back. Aizawa and his family would be spending Christmas with the Midoriyas and Izuku was very excited to be able to spend the day with them. The Midoriyas considered the Aizawa's family by this point, so Izuku was over the moon that he could spend Christmas with all his family. Izuku pulled on his ugliest Christmas jumper and some random comfy pajama bottoms and looked at himself in his mirror. The jumper was an atrocious clash of Christmassy colors with green tinsel around the cuffs and the words, Christmas jumper, in snow-covered letters on the front. To everyone who saw it, it was an eyesore, but it fit Izuku's fashion sense perfectly. He slipped on some green fuzzy socks before walking out of his room, phone in hand. The living room looked amazing and Izuku could smell the food his mom was cooking, which smelled delightful. Vampires didn't need to eat human food, it didn't really provide any nutritional value, but for Christmas they still all had a proper meal together. "Merry Christmas, Mama," Izuku greeted his mom before giving her a hug. The remaining two Midoriyas were sporting Christmas jumpers too. Inko wore a Santa hat and a mostly green jumper and red accents. Tuya, however, had on a hot mess of a jumper with a fire-breathing cat with skulls in Santa hats decorating the shoulders and neckline. "Yeah, Merry Christmas," Tuya agreed, slinking out of his room to plop onto the couch with his family. "Merry Christmas, my babies," Inko smiled, returning Izuku's hug and simultaneously dragging Tuya into it too. The three sat on the sofa watching the TV, contentedly awaiting their guests. Then the doorbell rang. "I'll get it," Izuku cheered, speeding to the door to open it. "Merry Christmas, little listener," Yamada grinned, multiple gift bags in his arms. Izuku wasted no time launching into the blonde to steal a hug. "Merry Christmas, Uncle Zashi," "Merry Christmas, guys." Izuku beamed at the other two from his place in Yamada's arms. "Merry Christmas, Broccoli Boi," Hitoshi grinned lazily. He was wearing a beautifully hideous Christmas jumper covered with cats in Christmas hats. "That jumper is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen," Izuku awed, getting back to his feet. "Oh, but it gets better, Zuku," Hitoshi started, his grin manic as he reached behind his back. Then the jumper lit up. "Oh, that's a work of art," Izuku cackled as he led the rest of his family into the home. "Dad's matching too," Hitoshi chuckled. The boy slid off the jacket he was wearing so his jumper could be appreciated in all its hideous glory. "No way did you get Uncle Shota in one of those hideous things," Izuku wheezed, looking in disbelief at his other brother. "I'll have you know this is high fashion, problem child," Aizawa deadpanned, taking off his coat to reveal the same awful cat jumper. "This is the best day of my life. We need to get a picture," Izuku marveled. Izuku bounced in place looking at his uncle with a mischievous glint in his green and yellow eyes. Aizawa ignored Izuku in favor of greeting Inko. She pulled the man into a bone-crushing hug before helping Hisashi place presents under the tree. A while later, after food and presents, Izuku suggested a game of Monopoly before Hitoshi had to go home, and oh boy, was it a cluster F of chaos. Tuya cautiously picked up a card from the board and read it in his head before groaning in annoyance. The family was sat in various places around the coffee table. Each one of them draped over one piece of furniture or another. Izuku plucked the card out of his hand before cackling maniacally. "Go to jail, Tuya," Izuku sang while Tuya was baring his fangs, hissing like a feral cat, which made Aizawa chuckle internally. "Shut your F, short stack," Tuya ground out. They were a competitive lot and Tuya hated losing to Izuku more than anyone else, the insufferable little sheet. "What was that, peasant?" Izuku said, fake yawning and pretending to count the stack of money in his hands. Inko sat between the two to prevent them from physically fighting, giving them both a fond yet stern look. Hisashi and Hitoshi sat across the board trying to hold in the laughter while Aizawa just watched the spectacle, unimpressed. What a lovely Christmas it was that year. The morning sun shone down onto the streets of Muzutafu. Birds chirped from their punches on top of various buildings. Rats scuttered from their hiding spots in dirty alleyways, and Tuya Midoriya made his way to his old house to confront his past. Well, some of it, he would never be mentally prepared to talk to the dickbag he had the misfortune of calling a father. Tuya walked up the cobbled path of his old home. No, that hellhole wasn't a home. Calling it that would be an insult to homes everywhere, it was a house at best. Bypassing the security gate was easy enough, after all these years the passcode hadn't changed. Tuya walked silently to the Todoroki estate, dragging his boots as he went, his already scuffed boots absorbing more dirt and probably a few scratches, but the man couldn't bring himself to care. The size of the house was overkill considering the few people that lived there, but then again that was rather on brand for Endeavor. It was still a little chilly at this time of the year, so the vampire wore a long coat over his turtleneck. It helped him look less suspicious that way. As he neared the front door, his mind plagued him with all the things that could go wrong by doing this. However, Tuya stood his ground and kept trudging forward. Yuri reassured him he was ready for it, as well as Inko, and he trusted their judgment. It had taken a ton of therapy with Yuri for him to be able to do this, but finally, Tuya stood in front of his old home. The BSTRD shouldn't be home right now, but the kids should be. He hesitated only a second before he knocked. There was a beat of silence before he heard a slight shuffling behind the door, then it opened. There she stood, the second oldest Todoroki. Fuyumi stood in the doorway, her hair slightly disheveled. Strands of her snow-white and red hair spilled out of the bun she had her hair in. She looked so much older, God, so much time had passed. Black squarish framed glasses sat on her nose as she peered up at him. She also wore a turtleneck except hers was black instead of the cream one Tuya wore. Can I help you? Fuyumi asked before looking up into her big brother's eyes. He looks like but it can't be, can it? Long time no see sis, Tuya chuckled humorlessly. He didn't regret running away, not in the slightest. But he does regret not being able to take his siblings with him. Tuya? Fuyumi stuttered, tears forming in her eyes. This man had different eyes, not the same turquoise she remembered, they were now a golden yellow, but this was undoubtedly her big brother. Yeah, it's me, Fuyumi. Can I come in? I have some things to talk to you guys about. Are the other two here? Tuya asked gently. Fuyumi nodded before walking further into the house, Tuya following close behind. The place felt cold and devoid of any joy. It really hasn't changed. Let me just get Natsu and Shudo, Fuyumi announced before shuffling out of the room. Tuya took that as an opportunity to look around the room. It felt so alien in comparison to his new home. A couple minutes passed and Fuyumi came into the room along with teary-eyed Natsuo and straight-faced Shudo. Hey guys, Tuya greeted awkwardly. Standing back up again and waving slightly. He knew this wouldn't be easy, but gods did he just want the ground to swallow him. Prove to us you're Tuya, cause if this is some sick joke I swear to God, Natsuo croaked. How can I prove it to you? Tuya asked. It's not like he could show them ID, he changed his last name. Tell us something only you would know, Fuyumi suggested, gesturing everyone to move further into the room. Well, when we were little you and Yumi couldn't get to sleep on your own sometimes and you'd curl up by my sides and we'd huddle under a blanket and I'd read you too that pre-Quirk era book series, Percy Jackson. Grover the Satyr was your favorite character Natsu and Annabeth was yours Yumi. Tuya chuckled slightly, reminiscing over the less sheet moments of their childhood. It's really you Tuya? Natsuo asked, tears starting to bead down his face again. Yeah, it is Natsu, I'm sorry I left, Tuya apologized, opening his arms to offer the teen a hug, to which Natsuo accepted immediately and Fuyumi joined, now also crying. I thought we thought Dad killed you, Natsuo continued to sob into his brother's shoulder. Endeavor? Kill me? Nah, I'm too spiteful of a man to die at that BSDRD's hands, Tuya joked, which only made Natsuo cry harder. Shudo stood there stunned, his brother who he believed to be dead was here, alive and well. What happened to you Tuya? Shudo finally asked after a long moment. It's a long story, Tuya scratched the back of his neck. He went on to explain where he had been for the last few years and his new family with the Midoriyas and the Aizawa Yamada family. He went on to tell them that he was currently obtaining his degree for literature and teaching license and that he was also in the process of getting a hero's license with the help of Aizawa. He wasn't going to get one, but Nedzu offered him a teaching position in a couple years if he were to get one. Tuya conveniently left out the part about him dying. The four siblings talked for a while until Tuya had to go to work. Tuya left the Todoroki home with his siblings' numbers, a weight off his shoulders and a promise to let them meet the rest of his family. Meanwhile Izuku sat in his room, in the dark, crying. He cried, eyes squeezed shut. He has no idea what's going on, but his eyes are killing him and he has no idea what to do, and he can't leave his room because when he sees anything bright, like the midday sunshine that's currently shining throughout his apartment, it feels like his eyes are bleeding. He used his mental connection to Tuya and asked desperately to get Aizawa to him. Tuya responded to him immediately saying he was calling him right that second. A few minutes later Izuku heard Aizawa calling through the apartment for Izuku. I'm in my room Dad, Izuku responded, whimpering when he opened the door and the light flooded in. What's wrong Izuku, are you hurt? Aizawa asked, kneeling by Izuku's bedside. He mentally smiled at what Izuku called him but did not dwell on it because his kid was hurt, that was the priority right now. It's my eyes. Izuku opened his eyes to look at Shoyuta. His usually green eyes were blood red. It's pitch black in here and I can see everything clear as day, and when I see any light it burns so bad I don't know what to do, Izuku sniffled. He didn't get scared so often anymore, but this terrified him. One moment he was sat napping and the next his eyes hurt to all hell. Izuku, do you have any sunglasses? Aizawa asked calmly. No, but Tuya has some in his room, Izuku responded, wiping the tears off his face. Okay, I'll go find them, then I'll take you to see Recovery Girl, she should be able to find out what's happening. The man got up and walked swiftly to his other kid's room to get the glasses. Once Aizawa retrieved the sunglasses he put them on Izuku and led him out of the apartment and to UA. Recovery Girl should be there today anyway. Recovery Girl was a witch. Her speciality was healing, obviously, and she was very good at what she did. Few members of the UA faculty were over 100 years old, but Recovery Girl was a good 500 years old or so. Perception spells that only affected the human eye, that's what allowed the witch to keep up the human act and appear to age. After all, she was not coined the youthful heroine for nothing. Contrary to popular belief, witches weren't ugly, Chio wasn't covered with warts and green wrinkled skin, she didn't curse innocent people and she didn't eat kids either. All the witch slander really annoyed her if she was honest. Chio was short, around 5 feet in actuality, though going by human perception she was much smaller, with long silver hair and soft, clear skin. She always had a spell book on her at all times. One may wonder why, in this day and age, she would carry a whole book around instead of a tablet or a watch that had the information she needed. And yes, this is a dig at Yamamo's stupid but fing costume, and but shelf? Come on Horikoshi. Well, witches' spells needed to be written down. She found that certain hexes and spells didn't have the same effect or weren't as powerful when read off a screen. What seems to be the issue, dearie? Chio asked the green-haired boy in front of her. When Shoyuta had called ahead to make sure she was available to look at his son, this was not the one she expected. Though he had mentioned him before, referring to him as the problem child, so she supposes she should have foresaw it. There's something wrong with my eyes, it hurts when I see light, Izuku explained, wiping the tears still flowing freely down his cheeks. Chio felt for the boy. She had a theory of what could be happening but she wanted to use her magic to confirm. Oh dear, that doesn't sound fun, let me just, Recovery Girl started before pulling out her spell book and drawing a shape in the air in front of Izuku. The star-like shape glowed orange before dissipating. It was a spell for diagnosis, he presumed. It seems, your vision has improved suddenly, it shouldn't be anything to worry about though, dear. It's like growing pains, but for you sight, your other senses should follow soon enough. I'm concerned by how rapidly this came about though, so I'll send you away with a special pain medicine for occasions such as this, though I must warn you, little one, it tastes like death. Chio chuckled and Izuku paled. While thankful for the witch's aid, he was not looking forward to finding out what death tasted like. You should be able to see properly without aid some time from now, but for the time being, while you adjust, I think some new glasses are in order. The lady thought aloud. She stepped back, slightly muttering some numbers under her breath before properly enunciating. Izuku then realized, she was casting a spell. Gold shimmers came into Izuku's vision as a pair of blackout glasses materialized into the air, falling into Recovery Girl's waiting palms. I do believe I got the measurements correct, sweetie, but try them on just to be sure. Izuku did as asked and tried the glasses on. The Viridian, metal-framed glasses fit perfectly, and much to his excitement, he could open his eyes without wanting to die, even with the fluorescent lights in the infirmary. He told the school nurse as much. Wonderful, I'll also send you away with some special earplugs in case the same thing happens to your hearing. Vampire growth spurts are always a pain. I remember when Shoyuta was younger and he dash. That's quite enough of that, old woman, thank you Chio, but we must be going now, Aizawa ground out. Mind your tone, young man, she glared, jabbing her cane towards Shoyuta, threateningly. The malice immediately melted of her features as she looked back to Izuku. Remember to take that medicine if you still get headaches. I don't want you to just suffer through them when sufficient medicine is available, even if it tastes awful, she warned. The greenette nodded. Yes, Recovery Girl. Izuku agreed, going to bow, and the pain immediately caused him to stop the motion. Clutching at green locks, he groaned in pain. Maybe take it sooner rather than later, pet, she patted him on the back gently. Izuku's head still hurt a little, but not as bad as before, more of a dull ache. Recovery Girl was a lot different to what he thought she would be like. He had only ever seen pictures and she looked so old and little in them. But meeting her in real life? She looked younger than Aizawa. Izuku left UA that day with a new pair of specialized sunglasses that blocked out light and a story to tell the group chat. He called Denki later that night only to be greeted with, "Good evening, Gojo-sensei." Perish, Izuku deadpanned as Denki giggled at Izuku's annoyance. Denki couldn't see it, but, under the glasses, Izuku leveled him with a playful glare. Come on Aizu, you gotta admit it. You look like Gojo from JJK now, you rockin' them Gojo 2000s. If only your hair was white like Tuya's, that would have been too perfect. Denki whipped a fake tear from his eye. Somewhere in the universe, higher power looked down at that comment and thought, hey, that's not a bad idea, I might just do that. Yeah thanks. I can't believe I suffered through such a traumatic incident and you compared me to that. Where the first chance you get, Izuku whined in mock offense. He wasn't really annoyed by Denki's teasing, but Izuku was always one to act like a bit of a drama queen. You know you love me, Aizu, Denki grinned. Izuku rolled his eyes because he knew the blonde was right. He was right most of the time when it came to disputes of this caliber. Yeah, that's the problem, Izuku sighed, flopping onto his bed staring at his ceiling. His hands, however, fiddled with the fidget toy he was holding. But hey, I only joked because you assured me 5 times over you were fine, you know that. Also, are you still gonna be okay to come over tomorrow, because we can reschedule if you're not feeling up to it? 'Cause of earlier I would totally get it dash. Nah, we've been looking forward to this for weeks, Denki Kaminari. It's happening, the greenette reassured, finality in his tone. Fine, fine. In the meantime you wanna play some Apex or something? Sure thanks, but I call Mirage. He kinda reminds me of you to be honest. Izuku giggled as he sprung from bed to his computer. Bonus. A week after Denki and Izuku's conversation. Izuku stepped out of the shower and used a hand to wipe the steam from the object. Absent-mindedly he reached onto the counter for his leave-in conditioner, eyes still focused on his freckle-covered reflection when he noticed it. Even with the lights off in the bathroom he noticed it. Burrowed amongst the thick forest of curls that lay atop Izuku's head, was a single white hair. What in the Johnny Depp's Willy Wonka bullshit was this? Why was he already going gray? Mummum. Get up, fucko, we gotta go. Tuya shouted from the living room. Tuya held a blood pouch between his teeth as he sorted through his bag to make sure he had everything. Once satisfied, he gave himself a once-over in the mirror, his faint appearance staring back at him as he adjusted his long black coat before slipping his boots on. What? Already? Izuku shrieked in a slight panic, staring wide-eyed at his bedroom door. Tuya had to be kidding because there was no way that he had been reading for that fing long. It was Izuku's last year of middle school and Tuya's second year of teaching, but first year teaching at UA as the cremation hero, Sayano. Now, for people who don't need to sleep, the pair were always somehow late, Izuku more so than Tuya. It was a little bit funny when Izuku and Tuya were younger, but now that it could actually land them in trouble? Not so much. Tuya was in less danger though, as he had free rein to use his quirk, or rather vampiric abilities, to get to work faster. Izuku on the other hand, not so much. But really it wasn't Izuku's fault. He was time blind and got distracted easily. He got caught up reading a book on biochemistry because he got bored yesterday. That happened often though, so it wasn't an unusual occurrence by any means. Currently Izuku looks like a bit of a goblin, also not unusual. The green-haired boy was curled up in his beanbag chair with his book. In the dark, it was just easier to read that way. Oh, and don't forget that he was curled up upside down. He marked the page he was reading, placing the book down before so gracefully rolling backwards onto the ground and standing up. Using his super speed, he whizzed round his room to get his school uniform on. He clumsily buttoned up his shirt while trying to shimmy his trousers on with the other hand. He didn't have the will to brush his hair if he was honest, it was getting super long, so he just used his fingers to dead angle it some and put it in a bobble. The end result was a slightly disgruntled-looking Izuku. He added the finishing touch, his glasses, before running out to go put his shoes on so he could leave the house with his brother. "Did you remember your teeth, Squirt?" Tuya asked, his hand placed on his hip in an impatient manner. Izuku, as smart as he was, often overlooked little things like that, but thank God his brother reminded him, or else he would have turned up to school with blood breath. "Be right back." Izuku dropped his bag on the floor and rushed back into the apartment. Tuya also reminded him to grab his lunch, the blood pouches Shoyuta left them. Once Izuku returned he flashed his brother a bright smile before dragging him to the direction they were both headed. "Tuya, you need to tell me every last detail about what teaching at UA is like, got it?" Izuku instructed. He was over the moon when he found out Tuya managed to get a job there. It wouldn't have been an exaggeration to say that the green-haired goblin was more excited than his brother when they got the news. Tuya wondered how much longer Izuku would be a green-haired goblin, his hair gradually gaining more and more white curls. No one mentioned it. Got it. Tuya rolled his eyes fondly at his little brother. Tuya was currently just in civilian clothes because although he was an underground hero now he did want his brother to be so easily connected to him, so left his costume at UA. Izuku helped him design it because he knew more about that aspect of the industry than him. The costume in question was black with blue detailing that was the same shade as the fire of his quirk. Black steel-toed combat boots, black cargo pants with blue panels going up the side of each leg, a utility belt because of course he would need a utility belt to put sheet in. A black sleeveless tight-fitting shirt, but Tuya's favorite part was the jacket. It was a black trench coat with blue flames traveling up it from the hemline. "Good luck on your first day, Tuya." Izuku wrapped the man up in a tight hug before the two parted ways. Which, of course, Tuya feigned disgust at the affection before giving in and ruffling Izuku's hair and walking off in a different direction. Days at school blurred together for Izuku. Everything was just too easy, it was getting rather dull for him. He quite literally had nothing but time on his hands when at home, so he used that time to learn things. Some of the information he knew was pointless, but most of it was practical information that he could definitely graduate high school with. He was already fluent in 5 languages for FS sake. So excuse Izuku for taking out his sketchbook and drawing instead of listening to his maths teacher drone on and on about something he'd already done 5 years ago. "Midoriya, since you think you have no need to pay attention like everyone else is, why don't you solve this for us?" A smug sort of look was on said teacher's face. twisting his already grotesque features into something, somehow, worse. Some teachers liked him, to some, he was their pet student, this was not one of them. Alright then, sir. Izuku placed his pencil behind his ear and walked up to the front and took the piece of chalk offered to him before he solved the inequality presented to him. To be fair, sir, that wasn't exactly a difficult question. Now can I please get back to my drawing? Izuku asked as politely as he could muster. A sheet-eating grin was plastered across his angelic face. Boy did he love annoying teachers like this. Well, I suppose you can for now if you already know how to do this. You can sit down now, the teacher spoke, reluctantly. Meanwhile Izuku happily walked back to his seat and got back to his sketching. He was doing an online art course and he was supposed to be working on a project to do with anatomy and he just couldn't quite grasp some of the proportions, everything just looked slightly off. Izuku sat happily, entirely oblivious to all the eyes in his class staring at him with a mix between awe and shock, some of them holding back laughter. At school Midoriya wasn't picked on, or at least not after that time in 3rd grade when an older kid was being mean so he turned into a lion to scare him off. But even then, even after proving that his quirk wasn't useless, his relationship with Bakugo was still broken and Bakugo didn't hurt him anymore. He just completely avoided talking to him altogether in most cases. Izuku still doesn't get why he doesn't like him. He hasn't even done anything. And as much as Izuku hates himself for it, he just can't get himself to stop caring for the angry blonde. This year Izuku vowed to somewhat fix their relationship because they would inevitably both get into UA. Izuku may use self-deprecating humor frequently, but he's not stupid. Regardless of what the physical test is for UA, he's resourceful and skillful enough to get in, and so is Bakugo, even if he acts like a dickhead half the time, and if they got put in the same class he doesn't know how much longer he could deal with Bakugo still acting like a twat. It was only a couple weeks into the new school year and apparently God wasn't done hurting the people Izuku loves just yet. Can Midoriya? Izuku report to reception, your brother is here to pick you up, said a teacher in the middle of the English lesson. Izuku was barely awake. That announcement soon got his attention though. He quickly gathered his things and bowed slightly to his teacher before taking off down the hallway. Something bad must have happened for Tuya to have picked him up like this, and it must have been to do with his mom too. Why else wouldn't she have come to get him? Izuku's stomach dropped further when he saw his brother still in his hero costume and tear tracks staining his cheeks. Tuya wasn't one to cry often, only over things that truly mattered, so this was scary to say the least. The memory of his brother dying in his arms played over in his head, the tear tracks on his scared face clear as day. Izuku, we need to get to the hospital, mom's hurt real bad. Tuya managed to get out. His voice was shaky, he was struggling to hold himself together, if he was honest. Izuku was waiting for the other shoe to drop, he supposed that was it. His life had been going too well apparently. The pair both ran out of Aldera, transforming, before flying to the hospital as quickly as their wings could carry them. Izuku had chosen to take the form of a hawk to make carrying his school bag easier. When they arrived, they asked for her room number before traveling through the maze-like corridors and eventually finding their mom's room. The two took a grounding breath before they stepped inside. The Inko the two knew was a strong, caring and all-around lovely woman. The Inko the two saw now, passed out in a hospital cot, was a beaten, broken version. She looked so small, so fragile, it broke their hearts. The boys sat either side of her bed holding a hand each, watching over her intently until her doctor came in. You must be Mrs. Midoriya's sons, the doctor greeted. Waiting for a reply, Tuya greeted him in return and quickly got to the point, asking how bad her injuries were. The car accident she was in did quite some damage, I'm afraid. Both boys winced upon hearing that, but the doctor continued. She had some internal bleeding, but we managed to stabilize her for now. She also broke her right leg in several places, but the worst of it was the damage to her spinal cord and the apparent head trauma she suffered. The doctor paused, allowing the boys to take in that information. Izuku's eyes were brimming with tears and Tuya wasn't far behind. Will she walk again? Tuya asked after a beat of silence. We won't know until she wakes up, but the chances of her being able to walk again are slim to none, I'm afraid, the doctor said solemnly. Oh, okay, thank you, doctor. Is there anything else we should know? Tuya finally asked. No, there isn't for now, but she probably won't wake up till tomorrow. She'll still need to be kept under observation and need more healing sessions from various Quirk doctors. Visiting hours end at 8, should there be any complication during the night, you'll be called. Immediately, Mr. Midoriya, and with that the doctor left the two alone with their mother. Eventually, Tuya and Izuku left for the night and Tuya called in explaining the situation to Nezu. They could deal with this, paralyzed or not, it didn't matter as long as she lived. Izuku and Tuya sat huddled together in their living room hoping and praying the phone wouldn't ring. Bakugo liked to think that he was somewhat observant and, knew Deku somewhat at least, but apparently he wasn't and didn't. Apparently he was wrong about a lot of things, or at least that what his therapist had mentioned, something about self-perception or something, he couldn't quite remember. He was getting off track. "Can Midoriya Izuku report to reception? Your brother is here to pick you up," said a teacher he didn't care enough to remember the name of. He probably should though, they've had the same English teacher throughout all of middle school. Since when did Izuku have a brother? When did that happen? How much had Katsuki missed out on? And more importantly, why was that extra picking the nerd up and not Auntie? Bakugo connected some dots that put a pit in his stomach that stayed there the entire day. He finally caved that evening and decided to ask the old hag. "Mom, when was the last time you spoke to Auntie?" Bakugo questioned. Mitsuki, still reeling from the fact that her son didn't call her old hag, answered, "I haven't spoken to her in a while." "Why?" "Izuku's brother picked him up from school early today and I'm worried something happened to Auntie," Katsuki admitted. Mitsuki saw the genuine worry in her son's eyes and decided to call Inko. The phone rang a couple times before it got picked up and a man answered it. "Hello?" a desperate and tired voice answered. "Hello, who is this? Where's Inko?" Mitsuki asked, getting gradually more concerned. A sigh of relief sounded from the other end of the phone before the person spoke again. "This is Inko's eldest son, Tuya speaking. Who are you?" "I'm Mitsuki Bakugo, a friend of Inko's. Can I speak to her please?" "So this is the other kid," Mitsuki thought to herself. "Oh yeah, Mom's mentioned you before but she can't speak right now. She was hospitalized earlier today but you are welcome to visit her when she wakes up tomorrow. It would probably be better to explain in person anyways, Mrs. Bakugo." Mitsuki was about to open her mouth to ask questions when she heard a pained shout of F-. Was that little Izuku? "Oh God, something's wrong with Mom. Look, I've gotta get to the hospital. Ive gotta go." And with that the phone was hung up and Mitsuki looked like she was about ready to cry. "Katsuki, we gotta get to the hospital. Something bad is wrong with Inko," Mitsuki said, picking up her car keys, calling upstairs for Masaru to get his sheet together. They quickly found Inko's room when one of the brothers came out looking stressed. She didn't exactly know to expect but he looked different to what she pictured. He was on the taller side with what looked like box-dyed black hair that was white at the roots. He looked a lot calmer than he sounded over the phone. Said man was hanging up the phone when he noticed them. The family of 3 walked up to the man. "Yeah, I'll see you in a bit, Shoyuta. Yeah, bye." "Oh, you must be the Bakugos. I don't think we've ever met but my name's Tuya. Mom's stable now but not awake," this Tuya geezer explained. "Where's Izuku?" Katsuki asked, hiding the desperation in his tone skillfully. Of course he cared about the nerd but they couldn't know that. Tuya raised a brow at the slip-up when saying Izuku's name but said nothing. "He's in there with Mom right now. We're just waiting for her doctor to come back, which should be any minute now," Tuya finished. Virtually a couple seconds later a lady in a doctor's jacket with weird-looking irises rounded the corner heading towards them. In tow was a hobo-looking man with scraggly unkempt hair, haphazardly thrown into a bun. He looked like the human embodiment of stress itself. "Hello, Tuya, my name's Dr. Matsubara. I wish we were meeting under different circumstances but alas, there's nothing we can do about that now. I'm just going to do some checks and I'll be out in just a moment." With that the doctor went into Inko's room and Izuku came out. He looked even more like sheet than usual. He somehow looked even more pale with tear tracks leading from under his stupid glasses. His long curly hair was even more messy than usual and he was wearing a hoodie 3 times too big that said shorts. Instead of his usual ugly high tops, he wore sandals and if that wasn't an odd but sight. He walked past his brother and the Bakugos in favor of hugging the homeless-looking man with the white scarf on. The man hugged him back. "Hi Auntie, Uncle, Kaken. What are you guys doing here?" he mumbled into the hug. Katsuki wasn't going to admit it, but he missed hearing that stupid nickname out of the greenette's mouth. "We heard about Inko getting into an accident or something and we wanted to see how she was doing." "You doing alright, kiddo?" Masaru spoke up. Izuku pulled away from the man who now settled for keeping a hand on his head. "I'm okay now. I know Mom will pull through. We thought we were gonna lose her and it scared the shit out of me." Tuya put a hand on his brother's shoulder, squeezing it reassuringly. Katsuki was slightly taken aback by Izuku's oh-so-casual swearing but ignored it in favor of analyzing the random old man holding onto Izuku. The man had pale skin with deep eye bags. He looked like he hasn't had a minute of sleep since the day he was born. Hobo man also wore a weird-looking scarf around his neck. He observed the man as he took the hair tie out of Izuku's hair and put it back in for him, neater. His movements looked delicate, practiced even as he used his fingers to gently comb through it before putting it in a bun, much like how his hair was at that moment. A stark contrast to the man's harsh-looking exterior. It was while watching that surprisingly domestic exchange that Katsuki also realized Izuku's hair wasn't fully green anymore. Izuku must have noticed his staring because he spoke, "This is my uncle show." Aizawa Shoyuta, the tired-looking man, nodded slightly towards Katsuki and his parents. "Izuku, you should probably tell Toshi and the others that mom's doing okay for now," Tuya suggested. "Oh yeah, I should, Danks is probably so worried," Izuku thought aloud as he pulled out his phone, seemingly calling this Danks. Katsuki strained his ears to listen to the two's conversation as Izuku walked a bit away from the group. Sue him for being nosy about these friends that he's never heard of till now. Turns out Katsuki hadn't known Izuku nearly as well as he thought he did. He thought he had the little sheet all figured out, but maybe he didn't? He didn't catch a lot of it, but he did manage to catch a "thank God" and "she's one too," as well as an "I love you," before Izuku hung up the phone to most likely call someone else. The green-haired boy made a few more calls before walking back over to the group. Then the doctor came back out of Inko's room. Inko isn't in any danger now, but she won't be awake for another day. She should also make a full recovery. "I'll call you when she wakes up, she'll want to see you," the doctor directs the last part at Izuku and the Aizawa guy. After hearing that news, they left the hospital, the two brothers going with Aizawa and the Bakugases going back home. Katsuki still had some questions though. Only time will tell if he gets the answers he's looking for. "Oh gods, I feel awful," Inko groaned as she sat up in the hospital bed. She turned her head around slowly to survey the area. Last thing she remembers was her being on her way to work, and then she tried to cross the road. The pedestrian light was green, she knows it was, but she still remembers the car. It didn't slow down, it just kept going. "Glad to see you in the land of the living, or I guess not anymore, Mrs. Midoriya," the doctor said, startling Inko slightly. What did she mean by not anymore? Oh gods, this was it, she died, hadn't she? She never got to say goodbye to Tuya or Izuku or Shoyuta or Zashi or little Hitoshi. At least she could be with her other little one foot, she supposes. She was dragged out of her spiraling thoughts by the mysterious doctor speaking once more. "Allow me to introduce myself. I'm Dr. Matsubara. I am Muzutafu General's resident vampire doctor." The lady, Dr. Matsubara, introduced herself. Wait, why was she being seen by a vampire doctor? She pushed the thought to the back of her head for a moment in favor of analyzing the doctor standing before her. She was a beautiful lady in Inko's humble opinion. She was tall with pretty, dark skin and short, black curly hair put in a small puff at the back of her head. Her fangs were out and her eyes were bright yellow with pink flowers that bloomed around the orange pupils in the center of her irises. Perhaps it was to do with a quirk? A mustard-colored blouse poked slightly out of the lab coat she wore. The color complemented her skin tone as well as matching well with the trousers and shoes she wore. "I'll get straight to the point, Mrs. Midoriya. Your sons made the decision to turn you. The doctors couldn't stop the internal bleeding and weren't sure if you would make it through the night," she explained slowly, cutting off Inko's inner train of thought once again. Her voice was kind and attractive, soft, talking slowly so that Inko could process what she was saying but not condescendingly so. "Oh okay, where are my boys, can I see them?" Inko eventually asked again after sitting on the information for a little while. As long as she can remain by her boys' side to protect them as much as she can, she couldn't care less that she was turned. "Yes, I called them not too long ago. They're both on their way here along with Shoyuta. It might be beneficial to get a clan house together as your families have a bond. Most vampires tend to go it alone, but it can be useful to have a support network," Matsubara suggested. It wasn't a bad idea, to be honest. The Aizawas practically lived at their house anyway, and Izuku considered the two adults to be his dads already, so it couldn't hurt. Tuya also considered them to be like dads, but he'd probably never admit it. Thank you for the advice. I'd need to talk to Shoyuta and Hisashi first. Do you have something to drink, doctor? I'm so thirsty," Inko complained, reaching a hand to her own neck. It felt uncomfortable, like she hadn't had anything to eat or drink in years. She felt completely empty. "Of course, Mrs. Midoriya, in the coming days you'll find that you'll be extremely thirsty, but that's normal. I have this bag of blood for you. I'll also provide you with more pouches to take home, as it's imperative that you get some human blood in you at first. After around a month you may start to use other animal blood, but in the meantime please have 2 of these a day. Shoyuta will be able to aid in you acquiring more." She handed Inko a translucent pouch filled with what she assumed was blood. Type O. She wonders if different blood types have different flavors, so to speak. You can't blame a professional chef for being curious. Just stick your fangs in and drink. It should come naturally, although it helps to visualize your fangs as a sort of straw. It will get easier with time, Miss Midoriya, Matsubara instructed. The fledgling vampire looked at the bag for a moment before rather ungraciously sticking her fangs in to eat, or rather drink, she supposes. Inko drank the crimson liquid, hungrily licking her lips after she'd finished. She smiled sweetly at Matsubara. "Thank you for that, sweetie." That was like the most satisfying meal she'd ever had. It was mystifying. How could something taste so spectacular? Sweet yet slightly salty was a twang of a metallic taste. No need to thank me, Miss Midoriya, I'll take my leave now, stay safe ma'am. And with that Matsubara left Inko with a smile. Inko sat up a little straighter in her cot, taking in her surroundings but with a little more coherence and certainty than when she first awoke. She never did care too much for hospitals. They freaked her out a little, in fact, eerily quiet, the too clean smell of disinfectant, the bright white of the halls, the sheets, the floors, it put her off. It was worse now though, she could hear every footstep, every breath taken, every door closed or opened. The smell was the worst part though. The stench of disinfect stung in her delicate nostrils. She already had a sensitive nose, so this was torture for her, a cruel divine punishment. A vampire, huh? She looked at her barely visible reflection in the mirror that was left by her bedside. Her once purely green eyes now had yellow flecks in them, much like her son's. She looked slightly paler than she was before too. The few stress wrinkles she'd acquired had vanished and she took on a smoother, softer and a noticeably younger appearance. She felt young again. She wasn't old in the first place, thank you very much, but her joints that once groaned in protest when she moved now felt limber and not so bothersome, and she felt a gnawing ache as if she were growing again. Would she get taller again? Does this usually happen to vampires? She had many questions, and for the moment, no one to answer them. I can do this. It's fine, I'll act like nothing's changed. Inko would later realize on her first day back at work that everything was in fact not fine. Her sense of smell was so advanced that as soon as she walked into the kitchen she was the head of she had to exit before she threw up. Who knew that a kitchen could smell so grim? Well, Inko does now. How did Tuya and Izuku put up with this? Inko groaned internally after chucking up all the blood she drank that day. This is gonna take a lot of getting used to. Inko also discovered that as well as her being in peak physical condition and looking younger, her quirk got stronger too. She could even lift people now. Which was useful when Izuku decided to not get up in the morning for school. As long as he ate enough he didn't even need to sleep, so Lord knows why he refuses to peel himself out of bed some mornings. They also moved into a clan house. It had 8 bedrooms, 5 bathrooms and a further 3 en-suites, a library, 2 studies and a back garden too. It was a miracle they found such a big house on such short notice, but between all the adult salaries they found a beautiful home. Shoyuta and Hisashi enlisted the help of their longtime friend Namiri to help them move, which they came to regret almost immediately. Namiri was practically drooling over Inko the moment she stepped through the door. Namiri was a lovely, lively woman. Inko also found out she was an incubus. That explained her flirtatious nature. She was sweet as honey and as pretty as the most beautiful works of art. Inko was shocked she was so interested in her, especially since she could certainly get a date with any woman she chose. As if reading her mind, Namiri rushed to soothe her anxious mind, assuring her that she was, to her, the most beautiful woman she'd ever seen and would be honored to go to lunch with her. Oh, that sounds wonderful, Ms. Koyama. Inko blushed slightly, looking at the floor in between the two. It had been a while since she'd gone on a date. Boy, was she looking forward to this. Midnight used her pointer finger to gently lift Inko's head to meet her soft gaze. Oh, please call me Namiri, beautiful, the R-rated hero winked. Inko, somehow, blushed even more, a determined smile now playing on her lips. Any trace of hesitance or shyness melted away as she gazed up into Namiri's eyes, something darker sparkling behind them. Of course Namiri, her tone was light and sweet, much like her usual tone. But Namiri could see the change in her demeanor, in her gaze. That was not the look of an innocent woman like she once thought. She could tell she would have a lot of fun with this woman. She didn't physically see it, but everyone else paled seeing Inko accept Namiri's date proposal. At least mom looks happy, Izuku, he murmured, a wry smile on his lips. If Nem corrupts that sweet woman, I swear, Hisashi murmured back, eyeing a slightly blushing Inko and a smirking Namiri. Inko couldn't help but chuckle internally. Yeah, innocent, we'll go with that. It was a relatively normal day for Izuku. After everything that had happened with his mom, the turbulent ocean of his life had finally somewhat calmed, the sky had cleared and the sun was finally beginning to peek through. He was extremely busy not paying attention to the lesson and instead drawing up some support item designs for his future hero costume when it seems 3 students have applied to UA from this class. Midoriya, Bakugo and Nagisa, good luck on your entrance exams, you'll have to work your hardest to pass, the BSTRD said, looking Izuku dead in the eyes. This motherfucker dash, Midoriya whispered under his breath. He never understood why this particular teacher hated him so much. Even if he didn't pay attention he always did the work and he never talked over him or chatted to others while he was talking like Nagisa did, so what gives? Wait, why are you applying for UA? Bakugo and I were the only ones getting in from this shitty school, one of Bakugo's lackeys shouted as if someone had personally scorned him. Bakugo looked up from the book he was reading. He often didn't pay attention in lessons anymore. He already knew this sheet anyway, so what's to stop him doing other things during lesson? What caught his attention was that DMN extra dragging him into his bullshit. He stared at the idiot incredulously, going to say something before he looked at Izuku, who looked like he was contemplating standing up and punching their dumbass. Teacher. Izuku scrunched his nose up also in distaste at the petulant child seemingly glaring daggers into him. Katsuki was also staring at him as if the blonde was waiting for him to say what he wanted before he told Nagisa, who was clearly annoying him, to shut the F up. He's changed so much since we last had an actual conversation, and looked back to his incompetent teacher. He wasn't in the mood to argue with him right now, he just wanted to get back to his designs. Hey sir, you think you could be more sheet at your job? Izuku grumbled, a strained and very much malicious smile stretched across Izuku's face as he gave the teacher a look of, I dare you to report me to the principal for swearing at you, mister. I like to pick favorites and bully the ones I don't like. He was really sick and tired of this man being such an a-hole. The class burst out laughing, which only angered the ash blonde more, most likely because the attention was no longer on him. Duh and or hello. Of course I'm gonna be the best hero you'll ever see, don't lump me and Izuku in with you, Bakugo stated as if it were fact with an almost calm assurance. It was almost unnerving to not see him shout or rave about his goals. His use of Izuku's first name also didn't go unnoticed by the white and green-haired boy. Bakugo couldn't believe he thought so highly of himself, especially when he liked to do the sheet he did in his spare time. No way would UA accept such an incompetent dumbass. Everyone quiet down now and Bakugo, sit in your seat so we can continue with the lesson, the teacher sighed, choosing to ignore Izuku's little jab earlier. He knew that out of the two of them, if Izuku decided to talk about his treatment in class he would get very much in trouble, so he just left it. The lesson continued with few issues, but then at the end Bakugo took that as his opportunity to approach Izuku. The guilt of not yet apologizing to him was weighing heavy on his mind, yet it was so agonizingly difficult to get how he truly felt across to him. What do you need, Katsuki? Izuku sighed. Just because he's seemingly changed doesn't mean it wasn't good to be at least a little cautious of the teen. He loved Katsuki deep down, but man was he being weird as shit today. I need to know why you kept looking down on me like you're better than me when we were younger. I talked to someone about it before and they had their own idea, but I want to hear it from you, Bakugo practically mumbled. It was odd, seeing the blonde practically lay his insecurity out for Izuku to see like this, but he couldn't help but feel a little confused. Bakugo continued to stand there looking the shorter teen in the eyes, yet fiddling with the strap of his backpack to distract his hands. Katsuki, why did you think I was looking down on you? I've literally looked up to you for most of my life. Why would I belittle you when I know how shit it feels to be treated like that? For once Katsuki doesn't know what to say. He looked at Izuku listlessly, a dim realization sparking somewhat behind his eyes. Look Katsuki, all I've wanted to do is be friends with you. I missed what we had when we were little and I hope you can stop hating me before we go to UA. Maybe you can even meet the rest of my family. I know Mom would love to see you, Auntie and Uncle again. You'd also probably get on well with my brothers. Izuku smiled sadly before walking to leave the classroom. Before he could make it all the way out, Bakugo finally spoke again. Look, I didn't hate you, nerd. I just, I hate talking about this feelings sheet. Just know I didn't hate you, dumbass. My therapist suggested I confront you, I guess, something about closure or some sheet. It was starting to click in Katsuki's head. Izuku wasn't trying to show him up, not really. That rivalry between them, Katsuki had created it himself and it caused them to drift to opposite ends of their turbulent ocean of friendship. I'm sorry for how I treated you, I acted like such a CNT to you, I still do sometimes, but I want to try to make things less shitty between us, Katsuki admitted, not meeting Izuku's eyes anymore. Wow, this was a massive shock to Izuku's system. Katsuki just apologized to him? I'd like to see Auntie too. Just get her to call my mom or something, the blonde grumbled. Izuku ran back and hugged the blonde, much to his dismay. Get the F off me, Izuku, the blonde scowled, hugging him back nonetheless. Oh my god, you used my name again. I think this is like the third best day of my life, Izuku squealed. Izuku finally let go and skipped out of the classroom singing a "See you later, Kaken," as well as a "You should come out with me and my friends, we're going to Disneyland next weekend. I'm sure my mom could get you a ticket. I remember how much you used to love Aladdin. How do I already regret saying what I just said?" Katsuki thought to himself as he slung his bag on his back, a blush coating his face as he bit back a small smile. He didn't think it would be that easy to start fixing their relationship. Deep down a part of Katsuki was jumping for joy. He wouldn't admit it right now, but he'd missed the green, and now white-haired twerp. Izuku speedwalked in the direction of his home. He couldn't walk with Hitoshi because they went to different schools and he wouldn't be back for an hour or so. Something to do with either an after-school club or finishing a project of some kind. Izuku was already halfway home and busy texting his brother and Pops about what happened with Bakugo minutes prior. That was a mistake. Curse his need to divulge nearly every detail of his life to Tuya and Hisashi. Izuku was walking under an underpass when he felt a rumble in the ground. It was subtle and anyone without enhanced hearing or senses probably wouldn't have picked up on it. All of a sudden, a giant person made from sludge emerged from the sewers and steam rolled towards him. Izuku turned tail to run, but him not strictly being allowed to use his super speed left him vulnerable to the putrid-smelling villain. A medium-sized invisibility suit. You'll do nicely. You're my hero, kid, the criminal chuckled as it climbed its way down his throat. It tasted revolting. Izuku wasn't worried about him dying, he was worried about the man being inside him while he would still technically be alive. At that point instinct took over, his eyes began to glow a dangerous vermilion, fangs extended from his mouth, his nails sharpened and an aura that screamed death and danger paused the slime in his very tracks as it tried to back away from the boy, stuttering out apologies as it scrambled to the opposite wall of the underpass. I am here, a voice shouted before Izuku was blown away with the force of the punch directed at the two. Along with it a wave of agony penetrated his very bones. Just because he had advanced healing does not mean that wouldn't hurt, figuratively, ton. Izuku blacked out for a couple seconds minimum, before his now broken arm reset and his definitely broken ribs followed suit. The pain was even more debilitating as he watched them correct themselves. He bit back a whimper as he sat up, tears gathering in his now relatively normal eyes. State your business, villain, Izuku heard a familiar voice ask. He looked around for a villain but saw no one but him, All Might and the slime villain who was now in a soda bottle. Odd choice of capturing method, but he'll let it pass. Who was All Might talking to anyway? The most distracting thing though was All Might's face. He wasn't smiling. That perfect pearly, press-ready smile was nowhere to be found on the tan blonde's mug. Suddenly, All Might's giant build was no longer awe-inspiring and comforting, it was terrifying. The imposing figure of the hero towered over the 5 feet 7 inches boy who now shrank in on himself, shaking like a leaf and using his non-aching arm to cradle the ribs that were still mending. Answer me, boy. The symbol of peace demanded rather impatiently. The hero's mind was going a mile a minute. This child reminded him too much of. With the mainly white curly hair, those demed freckles, and he knows he didn't imagine them before, those blood-red eyes. Gods, he'd like to gouge them out so as to never risk seeing those wretched things again. Are you talking to me? Izuku asked dumbly. Izuku wasn't a stupid person by any means, but right now he was the most confused and scared he's probably ever been. He knew very well that the hero was talking to him, but he didn't understand why he was so angry at him. When his emotions were too high, too powerful, his quirk would go out of control. As he backed away from the hero, he returned to his most comforting form, a rabbit. With a squeak of fear, a white and green furred bunny rabbit appeared before the seething hero. Not going to give me answers then? Fine. You can come down to the station with me, boy, and there you can be questioned as to your relationship with this villain. Before Izuku even had the opportunity to scamper off into a bush to have a panic attack in peace, the hero picked him up by the scruff of his neck, leaping off to where Izuku assumed was the police station. Dad was gonna kill him, All Might that is. Speaking of, he really wanted his dad right about now. Oh Toshi, you're back, why do you have a bunny rabbit in your arms? Detective Tsukachi questioned his friend. It had been a long day and he was expecting to see Toshinori with the slime villain, not a cute little rabbit in his hands. I found him with the slime villain, here he is by the way, and he had the same aura as him, eyes like the devil he had. I found these two together, most likely conspiring with each other. All Might explained his concern. A frown made its way onto Tsukachi's face as the blonde continued to speak. What are you talking about, All Might? There's no other person with you. Wait, the bunny, All Might nodded. Hey, do you think you could turn your quirk off? The bunny shook his head. Izuku was way too panicked to be able to get control of his quirk right now, but his dad would be able to help. He wanted his dad. Somehow, Tsukachi knew that. All Might, I have no idea what you're talking about, but I'm going to call Eraserhead as I assume he would best be able to help. Tsukachi disappeared for a few minutes, leaving All Might and Izuku, the former still keeping an almost painful grip on the back of Izuku's neck. The detective returned soon after, explaining that Eraserhead would be here soon as he was already nearby. Thank God, Izuku thought to himself, his nose twitching so he could pick up his dad's scent as soon as it entered the vicinity. Not 5 minutes later and he caught it, and as soon as he did he struggled out of All Might's grip, transforming into a Bloodhound, jumping up at Eraser, not caring for potentially scaring the hero as he knew he could recognize his scent. He liked the underground hero's face, whining, pawing at his scarf before transforming once again into a cat and burying himself in said scarf. The hero and detective were too stunned to react at first, it all happened too quickly. All Might was the first to recover. Eraserhead, stand back at once, that's a dangerous villain. All Might cried and Shoyuta looked on at him with confusion, a cold rage simmering under his skin. I don't appreciate you speaking about my son in that manner, All Might. Now what have you done to him? Quickly, his quirk activated practically of its own accord and the hero shrank back to his regular form. All Might gulped. Can you please accompany me to an interrogation room? I'm fairly sure this is all a misunderstanding, but I'd be happy to interview your son without the hero if that makes up for it somewhat, Aizawa Tsukachi offered. The blonde hero looked as though he were about to object but thought better of it when he saw the look on the detective's face. The interview went about as expected. Izuku had done nothing wrong and once again, All Might's fear and incompetence had gotten someone hurt, namely Shuta's son, so it's safe to say he was said. They left the precinct not long after. Izuku had finally changed back to his human form but clinging onto Shuta's arm like a lifeline. You doing okay, problem child? Aizawa asked as they got into the car. Not really, Dad. Shoyuta would have smiled into his capture scarf if Izuku was calling him that under any other circumstances. I really looked up to him and he just broke my arm and at least half my ribs because he thought I was some villain. He's such a dickhead. He's lucky he didn't break my glasses, Izuku whined, leaning his head on the window. Yeah, he is a dickhead, you're right, I'm sorry you had to go through that. Shoyuta apologized. God, he wanted to bash All Might over the back of the head with a brick for even insinuating that one of his kids could be any sort of villain. And even worse, nothing's gonna happen to him because there's no proof that he even hurt me. I'm selling my All Might merch. Izuku crossed his arm pouting. He was putting on a brave face so to speak but he was still shaking, it was slight, but still there. I'll help you box it up when we get back. You want a pouch? The man offered, reaching into his back seat and presenting Izuku with a blood jelly pouch. No thanks Dad, I don't think I'll be able to stomach jelly for a while. Izuku turned to look out the window, the world blurring together slightly as the two sped by. When Izuku got home he explained what happened to Hitoshi, who then also helped him package up his All Might merch before the two called their friendship group. That's so not manly of him, the now red-haired Kirishima chided. All Might wasn't his favorite hero but his disappointment at this moment was immeasurable. Paging Dr. Bates, Dr. Norman Bates, that guy has some serious issues, Kyuka commented, lifting her paintbrush off the page she was painting. She didn't care for All Might in the first place, but wow, was he a CNT. If I see All Might it's on sight, Denki also commented with a maniacal smile on his face and electricity dancing across his fingers. Izuku loved Denki so DMN much. Sigh, I miss you guys so much, I can't wait for us to meet up together again next weekend. Ooh, how about a sleepover after? You guys should come over to the pack house. We got plenty of room and we're more settled in now. Izuku enthused. Izuku was met with agreements of totally, cool and sure, sounds fun. Ignoring the fact you just said the word sigh out loud, Mom will be fine with it and Pops probably will too, but will Dad agree to it? Hitoshi asked. Only one way to find out, I guess. Izuku shrugged before immediately racing off to find Shoyuta. Okay, we'll talk later guys. Hitoshi bid the three farewell on his and Izuku's behalf. Bonus. Tashinori, what were you thinking? You are beyond lucky that they aren't gonna press charges. The detective looked at his now deflated friend. I was scared, Naomasa, Tashinori reasoned. That kid, it felt like he returned. It felt like I was standing in his presence. I didn't know what to do. If Tashinori would cry he probably would. He's dead, remember? And it's not like someone would have a child with that monster. He's not gonna come back, Toshi. Just go home and get some rest, okay? The detective patted his friend on the back before leaving the skeleton-like man alone in his office. Somewhere in Japan in an underground laboratory, a bogeyman sneezed, somehow. And somewhere else in Muzurafo. Achoo! Inko sneezed. Bless you, Inko. Namiri smiled, pulling Inko close to her as they sat on the couch in the living room. Kaken. I'm still so surprised you actually agreed to this. Izuku spoke happily as he skipped next to his old friend. The usual scowl Izuku saw on his face was significantly lessened to that of a more neutral look. It was pleasant. He had an inkling he would come, his mom told him, auntie told him he had to go, so he's happy. Said inkling was correct. Birds chirped from their perches and the sun smiled down on the two as they walked. It was a very nice day, even though it was very early in the morning. There was no rain forecast for today, which was ideal for the excursion they had planned. Old hag said I had to, the blonde grumbled. It wasn't entirely untrue. Mitsuki had practically forced him out the door, but he also kind of wanted to go. He wouldn't admit it though, not in a million years, or at least not for a couple years. Well, I'm glad you came regardless of whether or not you were forced. Izuku offered the blonde a trademark sunshine smile which exposed his dimples. Were those always there? Katsuki pondered. Hey, I was wondering, do you want a different nickname? I know how much you hated me calling you Kaken, and we're starting a fresh right, so maybe a more mature one. Izuku asked carefully. Kats or Katsuki is fine, the blonde replied as they approached what he assumed was Izuku's house. It was massive, but that was to be expected, he supposed. Izuku had explained that he basically had a family of 7 now. Auntie had a new girlfriend. Inko getting a girlfriend was a shock to Katsuki, but he was happy for her at least. So Kats, Izuku began again. Katsuki wasn't looking at Izuku, but he could hear the BSTRD smiling at him. He was extremely obvious, but Katsuki had an inclination that it was on purpose. My friends are inside, we'll do some quick introductions then head out, that cool with you? Izuku asked hopefully. In response, Katsuki kissed his teeth before uttering a whatever, which was good enough for Izuku. The introductions were short, Katsuki's of course being the shortest. Name's Katsuki Bakugo, don't annoy me, he warned. Of course Izuku, bless his soul, took that as an open invitation to sling his arm around Katsuki. Izuku was surprised that Izuku was still breathing after that, but it just showed Izuku how much he'd grown. He supposed. Instead he just sighed and, from what Izuku could tell, mumbled some sort of prayer. The ride there was pretty interesting. Izuku sat in between Hitoshi and Denki while Katsuki sat in between Kyuka and Izuku. Tuya sat in the front snoring, and Pop sat in the driver's seat humming happily to the music he had on the radio. He was listening to his favorite Nirvana album. Denki sat drawing shapes on Izuku's palm as he explained animatedly the lore of the Walton Files. Izuku and Hitoshi would interject intermittently to ask questions or clarify pieces of information, and it made Denki's heart swell that they were actually paying attention and making an effort to follow along. Kyuka and Katsuki discussed bands with each other, and Izuku joined in when the discussion moved to old emo bands. Izuku didn't think Katsuki would fit in with his friend so much, but he was overjoyed that they were actually getting along. It's like he filled in a hole that none of them even realized was missing. We're here, kiddos. Everyone pile out. Hisashi cheered, taking the keys out and shaking Tuya awake. Said man was slumped, leaning against the window with drool creeping out of the corner of his mouth. I'm up. Tuya startled. For someone who didn't need to sleep as much as a human, he slept a hell of a lot. The black-haired man grumbled to himself, pulling a flask out of his pocket before taking a swig of the liquid in there. It was blood. Tuya's day drinking days were over. After Tuya stumbled out of the car, they grouped together and began to walk. Where to first? Hisashi asked once they made their way into the park. Hisashi was wearing his usual sunglasses but had his hair down, which made him look somehow completely different to his hero persona. He had on an ancient band tee and some jeans much like Tuya. I say we just make our way around the rides clockwise, Izuku suggested. Izuku had on a vintage Disney hoodie, shorts and combat boots instead of his usual red high tops. He was never one to go around a theme park willy-nilly. They had to go in a certain order or it just wouldn't feel right. Most of the group felt the same way. Sounds good to me. Denki agreed, followed by the rest of the group. Pairs had naturally grouped together, with Denki and Izuku walking side by side, Hitoshi and Izuku gravitating towards each other and Kyuka and Katsuki doing the same. The group had similarly comfortable clothes on. Denki sported a hoodie and jeans. Izuku had on a t-shirt and jeans. He tried to wear Crocs but Kyuka forced him to change his shoes. Kyuka on the other hand wore black shorts, a band shirt, fishnets and combat boots like Izuku's. They bought them so they could match. Hitoshi was dressed similarly. He had black ripped jeans with fishnets underneath and one of his pop's old shirts. Katsuki had on some all-black cargo pants and an orange and black shirt. Denki took Izuku's hand in his as they all walked. Whenever a ride came into view, Denki would drag the vampire towards it, excitedly spewing whatever facts he knew about the ride or the film it was based off. Izuku would return the favor, matching the blonde's enthusiasm and telling him any facts he knew about that ride. Hisashi and Tuya watched the pair with knowing smiles. If those two don't get together already, Kyuka groaned quietly. How long have those idiots been like this? Katsuki asked, curious. 4 years. Kyuka responded seriously. Forgive her for being tired of friends' emotional density. She loved them, but they were thick as pig's sheet sometimes. Of course they have. Katsuki rolled his eyes. That nerd was an utter idiot for someone supposedly at the top of their class. I'll leave MB guys. It's hard to admit your feelings like that to someone, and it's not very manly to tease them about it either, Izuku lectured, sending a look to both Katsuki and Kyuka. Once the group had gotten back together again, Izuku turned to Katsuki, wiggling his eyebrows. Hey Kats, do you want to meet Aladdin? Izuku teased, making Katsuki's face heat up some. Shut it, nerd, Katsuki ground out. I don't care about meeting some stupid character. Okay, if you're sure, Izuku teased once again. Izuku may have lost the battle, but he would definitely win the war. The group wandered around the park some more before bumping into someone. And boy were the deities smiling down on Izuku today. "You're Aladdin." Denki beamed at the man probably walking back to his station from a break. "That I am, little guy," Aladdin beamed back. He probably shouldn't have been stopping to talk to them, but he would have probably been in more trouble if he just ignored customers anyway. "Hey, can my friend pretty please have a picture or an autograph?" Izuku asked, shoving Katsuki forward. The Katsuki in question was once again blushing and praying that a meteorite hit at that moment. He was going to kill that little sure. "Of course, as long as you're quick." Before Katsuki could blink, Aladdin had his arm around him and Izuku was taking a picture of the two. "Smile," Izuku said, sickly sweet. Oh, he was for sure gonna die. As soon as the actor left, Katsuki sprinted at Izuku, chasing him around the group and eventually being restrained by Hisashi and calmed down by Izuku. On the way back home, the group reminisced over the day's events. "I can't believe you actually blushed over meeting Aladdin Cats," Kyuka joked looking at the pictures Izuku sent. "Shut it, you twat, you got flustered over meeting Prince Naveen and Princess Tiana, you can't say sheet." Katsuki slumped back in his seat, crossing his arms over his chest, sulking. "He got you there, Kyo," Denki cackled, peering over the headrest in front of him. "Denki, didn't you start blushing and giggling when you met Kristoff?" Izuku reminded the blonde, who quickly stopped laughing. Kyuka and Katsuki sent him a triumphant smirk. Gods, they were too much alike. Denki fell back into his seat and rested his head on Izuku's shoulder, mumbling, "He was just so pretty though, it's not my fault." Izuku comforted him with a pat on the thigh. "Y'all are so annoying sometimes, I swear," Hitoshi mumbled, adjusting his Nightmare Before Christmas-themed Mickey Mouse ears. "You're still our best friend," Izuku pointed out. Hitoshi couldn't argue with that logic. The ride back was pretty quiet after that, especially since Kyuka and Katsuki fell asleep, leaning on each other, Izuku following suit not long after. Today was a successful bonding experience in Izuku's opinion. Bonus. "So Izu, you gonna explain the backstory behind Katsuki's infatuation with Aladdin?" Denki muttered into Izuku's shoulder sleepily, once again drawing shapes and patterns onto the shorter's hand. "Okay, I'll tell you, but if Katz finds out I told you, he'll kill us both," Izuku chuckled. Denki nodded into his shoulder, promising not to tell anyone. "When we were little," Izuku whispered, beginning the story, "me and Katz would play games like make-believe and the like, and one time after we watched Aladdin he talked about how pretty he thought he was. Then Izuku paused a moment to collect himself. "What did he do, Izu?" Denki asked curiously, looking up at Izuku. "He made me pretend to be Aladdin while we were playing and kissed me." Izuku snickered. Denki gasped. "No way!" Denki exclaimed, starting a laughing fit. Hitoshi's arm wormed its way around Izuku to smack Denki in the back of the head. "Shut up, Denks," the perpetually tired boy hissed. Denki was quick to apologize before burying his face back into Izuku's shoulder to muffle his laughter. When he'd eventually calmed down, he spoke again. "Hey, why does Katsuki get a kiss and I get nothing? This seems like favoritism if you ask me," Denki whined jokingly. "Oh? Is my little Denki jealous? Jealous of a 3 or 4-year-old Katsuki?" Izuku teased. "Mayhaps," the blonde replied. "Well, I can't have that, can I?" Izuku responded before leaning in and planting a small but sweet kiss on Denki's lips, drawing a small giggle from the blonde. "I think you're even more pretty than Aladdin, you know," Denki sighed happily. "Am I better than Kristoff though?" Izuku asked. "Don't push it, Izu," Denki joked, taking Izuku's hand in his again, tracing the veins he could see. Izuku giggled, leaning on Denki in return. "I'm so sorry that I completely disappeared on the face of the earth. Can confirm I'm still alive. A Stranger Things hyperfixation just hit me in a major way and I couldn't pick the FIC back up, but hopefully I'll now be back to slightly more regular uploads, like at least a chapter a month at the very least. In other news, I think I might be doing creative writing in university, which is fun," laughing face. "I'm not the best writer, in fact I think I'm kinda shitty at this, but it makes me so happy when I see how much you guys enjoy the stuff I write and I want to get better. And hey, who knows, maybe one day you'll end up picking up a novel I've written. How cool is that? There will hopefully be another chapter sometime today, guys. I haven't abandoned this FIC. I've also got tons of whips for more fantasy O's, a pirate one, some villain Izu ones too, but don't forget to visit my Tumblr too, because I don't post on there that often, but you could make requests, ask questions, or look at some of my shorter works on there too. My Tumblr. I hope you all have a lovely day. Bye. Kai chapter text. "Don't forget your scarf, honey," Inko reminded Izuku, floating a blue and black scarf over her son's head. It was made with the softest wool he could find, with a couple dropped stitches and knitted slightly too tight in places. It was perfectly imperfect. The scarf was courtesy of his mom teaching him to knit. It was clumsily made, but it was made with love, so it didn't matter. Made in the colors of his brother's hero costume. He made two, that one looked a little neater. Thanks, Mom, love ya. Izuku gave his mom a peck on the cheek before running out of the house to catch up with the rest of his family, including Namuri, who very quickly became a new addition to their little dysfunctional family of fantastical creatures. Turns out Namuri and Inko really hit it off. They weren't engaged or anything like that yet. Izuku was already counting down the days with that one. They were totally in love. But she already basically lived with them already, even if she hadn't already officially moved in yet. It was honestly a struggle for Izuku to even keep somewhat still in the car ride over to his new school. Granted, he had no need to mask when in the presence of his brood, but he didn't want to work himself up to crying as he knew he would. Happy tears, of course. He just couldn't help it. It was the first day of his path onto heroism in not only the hero course but in the analytical field. If class was half as interesting as the exams, Izuku thought he might never get bored here. The UA entrance exams, highly accredited for their difficulty and while not the be-all end-all of a hero career, could lead you down a path trodden by the greatest of heroes. With world-renowned teaching and facilities, the hero course is one of the most sought-after hero courses in the world, with international students even flying over for even just a chance at getting in. Safe to say Izuku was rightfully shitting himself. He knew he was smart, he wasn't that blind to his own abilities, he had a very good idea where his limits lied in fact, which is why he knew he wanted to take the public hero exams and take the recommendation exams in support. In Izuku's eyes, the support course was harder to get into, especially the analysis track. To get in you had to complete a test personally designed by the principal and you had to. No notes to take in, no time to prepare once you get your prompt. So one could imagine why that set off Izuku's anxiety big time. At least Izuku had a friend in the support course. Welcome to the recommendation exams. Nedzu chirped as looked across the students who would be taking the special exams for support, hero, and business. The written exam wasn't too difficult in Izuku's humble opinion. He was the first to finish in about an hour. He was taking the recommendation exam for support, specifically the analysis and coding track, because his ability to make the support gear he designed was mediocre at best, even with his papa's instruction. Once again, he knew his limits. Due to him finishing the exam early, he had his interview with Nedzu first, which sparked the beginning of a beautiful yet chaotic mentor and mentee relationship. When I saw you had been recommended by Aizawa, I was intrigued. You are one of 2 applicants for this track in support, and it just so happens that I am the person that would be teaching the 2 of you should you pass, Nedzu added nonchalantly, his face straight betraying no emotion in itself, but the gleam in the chimera's eyes spoke 1,000 words in a language Izuku was most fluent in. I hope to see you next year then, sir, Izuku replied, his smile wide and showing off his fangs. Should we move on to the practical portion then? I do believe MX Hatsum has finished their paper in the 20 minutes we have been conversing, and while unorthodox I would quite like the 2 of you to take your exams together, Nedzu explained as he hopped of his seat, fluffy hands behind his back as he strolled towards the door of his office, opening it before Hatsum could knock. Come along, MX Hatsum. We have lots to attend to. The pair quickly became friends throughout the course of their exam. Their vibrant personalities and eccentric traits and ways of thinking created an analytical duo that would in time no doubt be a force to be reckoned with. Needing to work together was actually a nice change of pace for the 2, as both were so used to working alone. But as Nedzu helpfully explained, in hero agencies it's custom for analysts to work in teams rather than alone, as much like regular hero work, many hands make light work, no one should work alone as one person cannot do everything. The public entrance exam was slightly different though. He had already gotten 97% in the written exam, so there wasn't much point in doing it again. He only had the practical to get through, which was not difficult in the least. If he were completely honest, he was a little disappointed. His dad's training was 10x more difficult. Though, he thought, they couldn't make the entrance exam as difficult as his dad's training, or there'd probably only be about 20 hero students in the entire course on a good year. He managed to get 50 villain points and saved some blonde French guy from the 0-pointer, as well as helping other applicants along the way. He ended up placing first due to the additional 60 rescue points, which was fine he supposed. Katsuki placed second, no surprise there, he was Izuku's best friend after all. Now wasn't time to dwell on all of that though. He had a classroom to get to, new students to meet. He and Hitoshi separated from their parents as they made their way to classroom 1A, excitement and nerves all rolling into one and bubbling to the surface of Izuku's skin in aggressive enthusiasm. He opened the door with a bit too much strength, causing it to slam open. Students with more sensitive hearing flinched and Hitoshi sent an apologetic look over to Kyuka, but before they could go over to her they were interrupted by a commotion at the far side of the class. It is incredibly disrespectful and unbecoming of a UA student to scuff and dirty school property. Remove your feet at once, you cretin, a tall, uptight blue-haired boy shouted at an entirely unfazed Bakugo. Oh brother, already? Calm down, glasses, you're old school, put a stick up your butt or something. Bakugo bit back. Izuku immediately went into his rational mode, any nerves melted away as he went to try and fix the situation. Hey, you with the glasses, I'm sorry I don't know your name, can you stop shouting at him please? I get why you're mad or whatever, but I think feet on the desk is the last thing our homeroom teacher will dash. Izuku was cut off by the loud student. My name is Tenya Ida, and those face piercings and ridiculous sunglasses also surely aren't allowed in the dress code. If you two think UA is some sort of joke, I suggest you both leave. He pushed up his glasses. Oh, this guy was annoying. No matter, Izuku was no stranger to people like this in any case. Hey, shut your fing trap, glasses, Bakugo started before Izuku gestured for him to stop. He slumped back down in his desk glaring at Ida. First off, Ida, I have express permission to have the piercings I have in right now, as they aid with my quirk and help subside effects of it, and these ridiculous sunglasses you speak of are to help me see and were prescribed by the school nurse herself, he lectured, gesturing to his snake bites, nose piercing, and prescription glasses. Secondly, don't try and lecture me when you have legitimately no idea who I am. First impressions count, and I do not have a very pleasant first impression of you, which one may argue is far more unbecoming of a hero student. I suggest you keep your nose out of other people's business unless it is a matter of health and safety, which, may I add, this is neither, he finished, gesturing toward Bakugo's feet, which were still on the desk, before walking over to where Hitoshi was now conversing with their friends. Ida stood with his mouth agape and Bakugo tried to hide his sniggering, a satisfied smirk on his lips as he picked up his book again, continuing to read. Denki-eye, Izuku lit up, walking over to his boyfriend, arms already thrown wide for the blonde to jump into. Izuku, the pair cheered as they saw each other. Denki jumped into Izuku's arms, Izuku holding the other boy with zero effort as the taller buried his face in the crook of his neck, a sunshine-like smile still on his face. Get a room. Kyuka teased, and the two conveniently ignored them, choosing to continue their little moment, chatting to each other much more quietly about something the rest of their group couldn't be bothered to listen to. Hey guys, I missed you all so much, Kirishima grinned, trying his best to wrap his arms around his friends, adding a slight color to Jairu and Shinsu's cheeks. After the hug, Ijiru emphatically explained a new piece of equipment his mom had gotten for her gym and all the different exercises he'd tried on it. While Hitoshi could probably listen to him ramble for hours, Kyuka was finding it a bit harder to keep her concentration on the enthusiastic redhead when there was such a pretty pink-haired girl talking to her friend about guns. So bad, but she thought to herself. A slender finger absent-mindedly twirling an earphone jack over and over as she sat on her desk swinging her feet, her attention only returning when Izuku shook her shoulder slightly. Guys, I can hear Dad, get to your seats, Izuku whisper shouted. Without a word the four nodded and went to their seats in different spots in the room, making sure to not speak another word because knowing Aizawa he would complain this was no place for socializing. Izuku looked over to the door to see the bright yellow sleeping bag. You all took too long to be quiet upon my arrival, apart from Midoriya, Shinso, Kirishima, Kaminari, Jairu and Bakugo. Well done, but the rest of you need some work. If you are here to socialize, then I suggest you drop out now. Aizawa's intimidating figure rose, folding his hideous sleeping bag over his arm and pulling a blood pouch out of seemingly thin air and draining it in one sip. My name's Aizawa Shoyuta and I'll be your homeroom teacher. Put these on. Aizawa presented a UAP.E kit, also pulled from what Izuku and Hitoshi could only assume was some sort of secret pocket dimension. Meet me outside in 10 or you're expelled. With that he shuffled back out of the classroom. Is he serious? A blonde-haired teen with a tail asked. Izuku really needed to learn the names of his classmates. He is being 100% serious. I suggest you all get to the changing rooms, Hitoshi drawled as he made his way out of the classroom, dragging his brother with him. His classmates scrambled out of the classroom after them, walking fast enough to get there quickly but slow enough for it to not count as a run under the watchful eyes of Ida.
Okay, sadly the chapter is over, and if you enjoyed the video just leave a like, and subscribe with post notification, so when the next chapter is ready, you will be notified. Okay, see you in the next video. Bye.